Chapter 2785, Blood Thunder King died. The fifth one. Jian Wushuang held the sword single-handedly, as he looked at the body of the young man in silver robes dropped downwards. However, he had a cold smile on his face. This smile of his looked like the smile of a demon in the eyes of the experts from the heavenly modest palace, and those under the lead of Blood Thunder King. Su Dao actually died. Even Su Dao was easily killed by him? This Jianyi is really scary. The experts from Heavenly Modest Palace were extremely shocked. They understood the strength of that young man in silver robes, Su Dao, very well. Su Dao was capable of confronting even peak Grand Ultimate Gods, and it was difficult for usual peak Grand Ultimate Gods, even if they wanted to kill him. However, he was simply beheaded by Jian Wushuang right now. Jian Wushuang's strength had undoubtedly arrived at the level of peak Grand Ultimate God. How scary was it when this peak Grand Ultimate God was great in the space-time law, and even held some sort of secret technique that stagnated time to allow him to move willfully. Whoosh! It could be seen that Jian Wushuang went floating out again like a ghost. Right now, his target was no longer grand-level Grand Ultimate Gods. He directly took action as long as they were close to him. The sixth one. The seventh one. The eighth one. One by one, the Grand Ultimate Gods that were considered top experts in the Danyang Holy Domain were simply killed like animals in front of Jian Wushuang. Slaughter. This was an absolute slaughter. Those two peak Grand Ultimate Gods from the Heavenly Modest Palace were separately pestered by Yin Sewer and gold-armored corpse puppet, so they had no opportunity to take action. As these two peak Grand Ultimate Gods were unable to do anything, nobody in the entire battlefield was able to stop Jian Wushuang. He was a god of killing, and what he wanted to do was killing crazily. However, all the Grand Ultimate Gods that he had his eyes on had no chance of escaping. Instead, they were directly killed before they had time to react. Moments after killing Su Dao, Jian Wushuang killed another 5 Grand Ultimate Gods with ultimate means. Together with those 5 previously, a total of 10 Grand Ultimate Gods had died in the hands of Jian Wushuang not long since the battle began. This horrendous killing had completely stunned the experts from the Heavenly Modest Palace, and those under the lead of the Blood Thunder King. Run! Run! Quickly run! If we don't run, all of us would be killed by this Jianyi. This is too scary, he's too scary. Both peak Grand Ultimate Gods from the Heavenly Modest Palace and Blood Thunder King had not given any orders. However, the Grand Ultimate Gods under their lead could not stand it anymore, and had already started to escape crazily. They were not dumb, and they knew how to observe with their eyes. Jian Wushuang's killing was really too quick, and it was too scary. It was like killing animals, and they were unable to withstand it. Under such circumstances, they had to think for their lives. Escaping was definitely the wisest choice. At this moment, they could not think of their own parties, as protecting their own lives was the most important thing. ****. The unruly elder in black robes, Chen Kong, who was fighting with Yin Sewer, also noticed this scene, and his facial expression darkened badly. He looked at Jian Wushuang deeply, and was secretly regretful. He had no idea that Jian Wushuang would be so strong, and had such horrendous means of killing. Under circumstances when he and the other peak Grand Ultimate God were entangled, Jian Wushuang was capable of wiping everything out. There's no other way. Retreat! Although he was secretly filled with unwillingness, Chen Kong still immediately gave orders to retreat. He was also helpless. Under such circumstances, this battle would not be continued even if he did not give the orders. Even if he forced those Grand Ultimate Gods to continue fighting with his own power, there would only be one outcome, and it was to be killed by Jian Wushuang. The final result was just being defeated. If that was the case, they should just try their best to contain their combat power, to return to the Heavenly Modest Palace. Retreat! Retreat! The experts from Heavenly Modest Palace, and under the lead of Blood Thunder King, were relieved when they heard Chen Kong's orders. They immediately thought of ways to shake off their opponents and started retreating. Yin Sewer's faction and the Sword Alliance definitely would not stop here. Instead, they started another round of chase to kill. As for Jian Wushuang, he already had his eyes locked on one person. Everybody can leave but him. Jian Wushuang slightly narrowed his eyes as he stared at Blood Thunder King, who also started to run and escape. Blood Thunder King was a member of the Crimson Stone Fort and leader of one of the bigger factions. As a result, he colluded with Heavenly Modest Palace, an outsider, and tried to snatch the control over the Crimson Stone Fort. He could be called as a rebellion of the Crimson Stone Fort. He definitely had to stay as he was heinous. Blood Thunder King. Jian Wushuang yelled loudly while Yin Suer, who was beside him, also had an extremely cold expression on her face. The two of them had completely locked on Blood Thunder King, but Jian Wushuang was speedily and had immediately skimmed over. Under the suppression of the huge domain, the speed of Blood Thunder King's escape was greatly reduced. Jian Wushuang caught up with him easily. Then, Jian Wushuang stretched out his right hand and pointed in the direction of the Blood Thunder King. The effects of the majestic space-time law started acting. This is bad. The expression on Blood Thunder King's face changed greatly. Jian Wushuang had used this skill many times in this battle, and Blood Thunder King clearly understood the weirdness and scariness of this skill. He was not good in the space-time law, and once he was hit by this, he might be instantly killed by Jian Wushuang under the space-time stagnation. Master Chen Kong, save me! Save me quick! Blood Thunder King started yelling drearily. At this moment of life and death, he could only hope that those two peak grand ultimate gods from the Heavenly Modest Palace would come to his rescue. Apart from that, only these two peak grand ultimate gods were capable of saving him. However, Chen Kong's face slightly darkened when he heard Blood Thunder King yelling. He only swept past Blood Thunder King coldly without pausing himself. Chen Kong totally ignored Blood Thunder King's call for help, so naturally none of the grand ultimate gods from the Heavenly Modest Palace would go rescue him. As for the grand ultimate gods that were under Blood Thunder King's lead, there were a small number of them left, but their strength was beneath him. They were completely frightened of Jian Wushuang, and humans were selfish. They were unable to protect themselves under such circumstances. Who would exchange for Blood Thunder King's life with their own lives? No, no. Blood Thunder King became extremely frightened when he saw that none of the surrounding experts paid notice to him. A hint of desperation appeared in his eyes. Without any indication, the space-time the Blood Thunder King was in complete stagnation, and he entered a state of stagnation, losing the ability to resist. Jian Wushuang crossed paths with Blood Thunder King and beheaded him with his cold sword light. The Blood Thunder King had finally died. Chapter 2786. Another unforeseen event. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. The experts from Heavenly Modest Palace, and under the lead of Blood Thunder King, who were escaping, managed to do so. On the battlefield, many of the experts from Suer's faction and the Sword Alliance stood there. They were shocked when they saw Blood Thunder King's body fall down slowly. As the leader of one of the three biggest factions in the Crimson Stone Fort, Blood Thunder King had been controlling the Crimson Stone official army since long ago, and he had a high prestige in the Crimson Stone Fort. For a long period of time, Blood Thunder King had been having a crazy fight with Suer and Yunshan's factions. Right now, Blood Thunder King has finally died. With the death of Blood Thunder King, his faction will naturally break apart. Yunshan's faction had also been badly hit, and they aren't capable of causing any more trouble. Has the lengthy internal battles of the Crimson Stone Fort finally ended? Palace Keeper Sijun mumbled to himself, but his heart was secretly filled with melancholy. Beside him, many of the experts from Suer's faction had a complicated feeling. The Crimson Stone Fort was originally the publicly recognized domineering party in the Danyang Holy Domain. It was originally a huge force, but their strength had been continuously weakened as internal battles had never stopped after the death of the Crimson Stone Saint. However, such fights had finally come to an end. Among all the factions in the Crimson Stone Fort, the person who managed to stand to the end was still the true descendant of the Crimson Stone Fort, Suer. Has it finally ended? Suer also mumbled as her body slightly trembled. The internal fight of the Crimson Stone Fort has ended, but you shouldn't be happy so early on. Jian Wuxia suddenly said. Suer slightly focused her line of sight. Palace Keeper Sijun and the others had turned to look at Jian Wuxia. This battle took a long period of time, from battling Yunshan's faction in the beginning to defeating the Heavenly Modest Palace and Blood Thunder King's faction. It's impossible that the pinnacle forces of the Danyang continent did not realize what's happening in such a long period of time. However, we still haven't seen any of them until now. Jian Wuxia said coldly. The facial expressions of the people there turned into a serious one when they heard this. It was true that Suer planned to have a swift battle previously. She wanted to defeat Yunshan and Blood Thunder King's factions before the pinnacle forces realized what was happening. However, the truth was that they had used too much time. This was also because the appearance of the Heavenly Modest Palace was unexpected. They had no other option but to spend such a long period of time defeating the Heavenly Modest Palace and Blood Thunder King's faction. Such a long period of time was sufficient for the pinnacle forces to prepare themselves. If I guess correctly, the experts from the four pinnacle forces, Namwu Palace, Life and Death Tower, Divine Demon Sect and Dongfang Clan had arrived near Bane City. The reason they did not show themselves is because they are waiting for both sides to suffer losses, and they shall benefit from our dispute after the results are out. Jian Wuxuang's eyes turned cold. Now that the battle is over, the experts from these four pinnacle forces are about to show themselves. The experts in the surrounding area started looking at the surrounding voids after they heard what Jian Wuxia said. Certainly, there they are. An exclaiming voice could be heard. Everybody immediately followed the voice and looked in that direction. A large number of densely packed black spots could be seen at the edge of a faraway void. These black spots were rushing over at an extraordinary speed. Within moments, a huge number of figures had appeared before Jian Wuxia and the others. Waves of domineering divine power came spreading from these figures. As they felt this divine power, Jian Wuxia, Suer and the experts under their lead had darkened expressions on their faces. Namwu Palace, Life and Death Tower, Dongfang Clan and the badly wounded Divine Demon Sect had really come over. Suer gritted her teeth as the look in her eyes turned to a cold one. At this moment, the people standing in front of them were the experts from these four pinnacle forces. The appearance of these four pinnacle forces at the same time meant that they had united and formed a coalition force. However, the coalition force of these four pinnacle forces was extremely strong. The experts that arrived on scene were of the Grand Ultimate God level, and there were more than 50 of them. That was right, more than 50 Grand Ultimate Gods. This was the combat power formed when the four pinnacle forces united. Among them, the strongest Nanwu Palace had almost 20 grand ultimate gods. As the Life and Death Tower and Dongfang clan almost sent everybody that they had. It was also a significant number from their side. As for the Divine Demon Sect, as they were badly defeated and lost 9 grand ultimate gods previously, they could only come up with a couple of grand ultimate gods, due to the pressure they would stand from the outside world throughout the years. However, these four pinnacle forces still accumulated more than 50 grand ultimate gods in total. Such a number of grand ultimate gods in a holy domain was sufficient to scare one to death. If the Crimson Stone Fort was still in its peak era, or before the bigger factions had not really fought, an alliance between Yin Suer, Yun Shan and Blood Thunder King's factions might be sufficient to withstand the coalition force between these four pinnacle forces. However, the Blood Thunder King's faction had been completely defeated, and he was dead right now. Yun Shan's faction had also suffered a horrendous blow, and only 4 badly wounded people were left alive. Even the strongest faction that belonged to Yin Suer had also lost many grand ultimate gods in 2 consecutive battles. Those that were still alive were wounded, and had suffered a great depletion in their divine power. Even if they considered the Sword Alliance, the combat power of grand ultimate gods that they had at the moment were less than 30 people. Apart from that, all 4 pinnacle forces had peak grand ultimate gods as their leaders, and that meant that the coalition force had a total of 4 peak grand ultimate gods. Among them, Nanwu Palace Master was even the publicly recognized number 1 expert in the Danyang Holy Domain. In terms of the highest combat power level, the alliance of the 4 pinnacle forces had complete superiority. In the void on top of Bane City, the coalition force stood facing Jian Wushuang, Yin Suer, and the others some distance away. The experts in the coalition force formed by those 4 pinnacle forces were extremely excited at that moment. Haha, Yin Suer and Su Han, the 2 of you had put on a good show for us. Nanwu Palace Master's loud laugh could be heard reverberating throughout the entire sky and land. The coalition force formed of those 4 pinnacle forces had received news since early on, and they had immediately rushed over. When they arrived, the fight between Yin Suer and Yun Shan's factions had not ended, so they had seen almost the entirety of this great battle. That included the last-minute team changing of the Sword Alliance, appearance of the experts from the Heavenly Modest Palace, and also the attack Jian Wushuang carried out in the end that wiped out everything. They also saw the scene of him killing Blood Thunder King. Su Han, no, I should call you Jianyi. Your way surprises even me. Nanwu Palace Master looked at Jian Wushuang with a smile on his face. The Life and Death Tower Master and Dongfang Clan Master, beside him, also looked at Jian Wushuang with weird looks on their faces. Only Dong Shun, the Divine Demon Sect Master, looked at Jian Wushuang with a huge amount of anger and will to kill. Chapter 2787. Unite against foreign forces different from the experts in the coalition force, formed by the 4 pinnacle forces. The experts from Yin Suer's faction and Sword Alliance had extremely darkened expressions. The situation right now was obviously unfavorable for them. For Master, Jian Wushuang appeared beside Yin Suer and asked softly, "This is an important battle, and there are quite a lot of unforeseen events. You should have predicted this, so you must have reserved some backhands?" "I prepared some, but it's still not enough for us to go up against the coalition force formed by the 4 pinnacle forces. After all, not only do they have lots of experts, they did not go through a huge battle just now, and are still in peak condition. Our people, on the other hand, had gone through 2 continuous battles, and suffered some serious wounds. Apart from that, the consumption of their divine power are quite great." Yin Suer said, "I know that. However, it's good enough that you've prepared some backup, as I've also prepared some backhands." Jian Wushuang said, "What?" Yin Suer looked at Jina Wushuang in surprise. At this moment, whoosh, 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 4 figures came skimming over from a nearby void, and appeared at the edge of the battlefield. The expressions of the experts from both parties slightly changed when they saw these 4 figures. Yun Shan. Yin Suer's facial expression also slightly darkened. Yun Shan's faction had been directly defeated previously, and only 4 out of their many experts were alive. Yin Shan was one of those 4. Following the altercation between Yin Suer and Blood Thunder King's factions, Yin Shan grabbed the opportunity to leave. However, Yin Shan had appeared once again at this crucial moment. After observing the divine power of those 3 people behind him, it was obvious that the 4 of them had taken the opportunity just now to heal themselves, as their condition and divine power had obviously recovered quite a bit. However, what Yin Suer did not understand was what Yin Shan planned to do by appearing again at this moment. Yin Shan had a darkened look on his face when he was stared at by so many experts. He glanced at Yin Suer, and a complicated look flashed past his eyes. His eyes turned incredibly cold as he turned to look towards the coalition force, formed by the 4 pinnacle forces. Tianmu, come out! A loud yell could be heard blasting through the sky and earth. This blasting yell consisted of unprecedented anger and horrendous will to kill, causing many experts there to tremble uncontrollably. Tianmu. Yin Suer frowned, and immediately looked towards the coalition force, formed by the 4 pinnacle forces. Surely, a thin elder in black robes slowly raised his head, showing a cold and weird smile on his face. Tianmu. Yin Suer immediately yelled with both anger and surprise. It's Grand Ultimate God Tianmu, and he's under Yin Shan's lead. Yin Shan had always trusted him throughout the years. Palace Keeper Si Zhen's facial expression also changed. What's going on? Why is Grand Ultimate God Tianmu among the coalition force formed by the 4 pinnacle forces? From the looks of Yin Shan's action, could it be that Yin Suer and Palace Keeper Si Zhen immediately thought of a possibility? Haha. Yin Shan, I've followed you for so many years. Do you need to act like this the moment we meet? The cold elder covered under black robes, Grand Ultimate God Tianmu, laughed weirdly as his eyes were filled with a mocking look. How dare you mention that you followed me for many years? Yin Shan said coldly. Have I treated you badly throughout the years? How dare you betray me and the Crimson Stone Fort? How dare you scheme against me? Betray? That would be a wrong word to use. Yin Shan, you had always acted out with consideration of the Crimson Stone Fort, even though Yin Suer had already had the upper hand. You knew that Yin Suer was much stronger than you, yet you were still dumb enough that you wanted to rely on your own power. You deserve to be wiped out by Yin Suer. I was only helping you. Grand Ultimate God Tianmu laughed mockingly. After that, Grand Ultimate God Tianmu glanced at Nanwu Palace Master, and said with ridicule, Palace Master, I was right. If I purposely give the game away, and let Yin Suer's people know that I'm in contact with Nanwu Palace, Yin Suer would definitely take action the next second. It is true that we have to thank you this time, or we would not know how long we need to wait for Yin Suer to take action against Yin Shan, and the coalition of our 4 pinnacle forces would not have obtained such an upper hand so easily. After this is over, and we wipe out the Crimson Stone Fort, you will definitely receive benefits from us. Nanwu Palace Master said with a smile. Thank you, Palace Master. Grand Ultimate God Tianmu was delighted. After listening to the conversation among those 2, not only Yin Suer and Palace Keeper Si Zhen, even Jian Wushuang, and the Grand Ultimate Gods under his lead also understood what was happening. ***. Turns out, everything was made up by Tianmu. Palace Keeper Si Zhen had a darkened look on his face. Although Great Elder Yin Shan had always been fighting with Fort Master, he had never borrowed the power of outer forces, and had always been snatching the control of Crimson Stone Fort from Fort Master with his own power. I had been wondering why he would suddenly compromise with Nanwu Palace and ask them for help. Turns out that Great Elder Yin Shan had never contacted Nanwu Palace, and everything was made up by Grand Ultimate God Tianmu. Palace Keeper Si Zhen was Yin Suer's right-hand man, and he had the clearest information about things in the Crimson Stone Palace. Yin Suer decided to directly take action against Yin Shan's faction, because she received news that Yin Shan's faction was already in contact with Nanwu Palace. Leaving her with no choice, Yin Suer was forced to immediately take action. The reason they received news that Yin Shan's faction was in contact with Nanwu Palace was because of Grand Ultimate God Tianmu. All this time, Grand Ultimate God Tianmu had been the one contacting Nanwu Palace, and he even led the experts from Namwu Palace to meet Yin Shan. As Grand Ultimate God Tian Mu was one of the people Yin Shan trusted the most, such actions had caused Palace Keeper Xizhen to have misunderstood that Yin Shan was the one in contact with Namwu Palace. However, he only learned right now that everything was just made up by Grand Ultimate God Tian Mu. He purposely put up an act to cause a misunderstanding on their side, so that Yin Suer would decide to immediately take action against Yin Shan. It could be said that Grand Ultimate God Tian Mu had schemed against both Yin Suer and Yin Shan's factions. ****. Yin Suer had a cold look in her eyes as she said the word, Yin Suer. Yin Shan spoke in a powerful voice, and he had already looked towards Yin Suer. He had a complicated look in his eyes, but he still spoke up. As we're facing some powerful enemies, shall we put aside our differences and think of a way to work together and solve the issues in front of us? What do you think? Sure. Yin Suer nodded without hesitation. She also hoped to form an alliance with Yin Shan. After all, no matter how big the hatred or how bad the fight between her and Yin Shan was, they were internal issues of the Crimson Stone Fort. No matter who won in the end, the Crimson Stone Fort was still there, and only the leader was different. However, if the alliance of these four pinnacle forces had their way, the long-time basis of the Crimson Stone Fort would completely disappear. Chapter 2788. Back up in just a short moment. Yin Suer and Yin Shan had already decided to set aside their grudges and unite against the enemy. This scene was naturally witnessed by the four great factions. Yin Shan, I do admire you a little. This Yin Suer has just severely injured your faction and killed many of the Grand Divine Paragons under her command. You yourself have been forced into an extremely sorry state by her. How long has it been? You can actually endure this and take the initiative to join forces with Yin Suer? Namwu Palace Master looked at Yin Shan in surprise. Although this old man is not satisfied with this little girl becoming the new Fort Lord of the Redstone Castle, and has been fighting with her for so many years, no matter how fierce our fight is, it is still an internal matter of the Redstone Castle. And this Redstone Castle is the foundation that the Redstone Saint and I jointly created. This old man has poured almost all of my blood, sweat, and tears into it. Compared to the survival of the Redstone Castle, this old man will put down any personal grudges. Yin Shan said coldly. Oh. Palatial Lord Nam narrowed his eyes. Jian Wuxia could not help but glance at Yin Shan. Previously, he did not know much about Yin Shan, and only knew how to help Yin Suer defeat it. However, he now had some respect for Yin Shan. Indeed, perhaps Yin Shan was unwilling to accept Yin Suer, but he would definitely give his all to the Redstone Castle. With Yin Shan's help and the backup that Yin Suer and I have prepared, perhaps we can really fight against the allied forces of the four great organizations. Jian Wuxia murmured. Namwu, cut the crap with them. Just attack. The Grand Divine Warriors under Yin Suer's faction have been taking advantage of the time to recover their injuries and their divine power. If we don't attack now, once they've all recovered, we won't have an absolute chance of victory. The Pavilion Master of Life and Death said coldly. Palatial Lord Nam nodded slightly. We have a huge advantage in this battle. We have at least a 90% chance of victory, but we can't be careless. Also, we need to be careful of that Jian. His ability to freeze time and space is too strange. Moreover, his comprehension of the laws of space and time is extraordinarily high. Killing ordinary high-level Grand Divine Paragons is like slaughtering chickens and dogs. Although our allied army has many Grand Divine Paragons, we can't withstand his unscrupulous slaughter, so we need to think of a way to prevent him from slaughtering us, said the Patriarch. That's simple. Just arrange for a peak-level god supremacy to fight him. Palatial Lord Nam smiled. East God, this sword one has made your god-fiend sect so miserable. Now I'll hand him over to you. How about it? I am more than happy to do so. I will definitely skin this brat alive and tear his bones apart. The Eastern deity's gaze was cold as he stared fixedly at Jian Wuxia. Do it. Palatial Lord Nam smiled coldly. In an instant, the more than 50 Grand Divine Warriors from the alliance of the four factions behind him moved. There were more than 50 Divine Masters, each of them exuding a powerful aura that surged over like a torrent. Coming, Jian Wushuang, Yin Suer, Yun Shan, and the others had solemn expressions. Fort Lord, if you have any backup plans, use them quickly, the unparalleled sword said. Yes. Yin Suer nodded, then immediately took out a command talisman and crushed it. As soon as he crushed the talisman, the experts hiding in the nearby space that Yin Suer had arranged beforehand moved. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. In the surrounding space, 8 figures shot over at an astonishing speed. These 8 figures were also 8 great divine paragons. Among them, there were 3 high-level great divine paragons. Those are people from Baiyun Prefecture, Demon Sealing Hall and Eclipse Sect. 3 first-rate factions? The experts from both factions were surprised to see these 8 people. Yin Suer, looks like I still underestimated you. I never thought that you would have prepared a backup plan. Although I don't know what benefits these 3 experts from the first-rate factions have obtained from you to actually help you. They're just 3 first-rate factions. They only have 8 god supremacies. Do you think they can change anything? Palatial Lord Nam smiled disdainfully. Although the appearance of the 8 divine venerates had greatly improved Yin Suer's faction, the difference between their factions was too great. Even if Yin Suer had 8 more divine sovereigns now, her overall strength was still greatly inferior when compared to the joint forces of the 4 great powers. Moreover, in terms of the highest battle prowess, the difference was extremely great. Die! Palatial Lord Nam's aura was overwhelming, far stronger than anyone present. He was also at the forefront of the coalition forces. As soon as he charged over, only Yin Suer from the Red Stone Castle and the Sword Union dared to face him head-on. However, when Yin Suer exchanged blows with Palace Master Nanwu, bang! A deep sound of collision rang out. Yin Suer's face paled, and she instantly retreated explosively. Although they were both peak divine venerates, the difference between their strengths was instantly revealed. Palace Master Nanshu was indeed worthy of being the publicly accepted #1 expert of the Saints' world. Even though he was slightly suppressed by Jian Wushuang's domain, and his strength was slightly limited, his battle prowess was still much greater than Yin Suer's. In a one-on-one battle, Yin Suer was definitely not Palace Master Namo's opponent. Jian Wushuang's expression darkened when he saw this. Elder Tong! A loud roar reverberated through the world. In the next moment, Elder Tong, who had remained hidden in the dark, charged into the battlefield as a streak of light. He immediately began to fight Palace Leader Nanwu. You're Old Tong, you've broken through? Palace Leader Nanwu was rather surprised when he saw the Peak Exalt Tong, who had appeared before him. Haha, I've only broken through recently as well. I really am lucky to be able to fight against the strongest expert of the Saints' world, right after breaking through. Old Tong laughed aloud. So what if you've broken through? If you dare stop me, you'll die without a doubt. Namo Palace Master shouted coldly, the terrifying aura on his body completely pressed down on Elder Tong. Only when he truly came face to face with the leader of the Namo Palace could Elder Tong sense the tremendous pressure from her. He also understood that the #1 expert of the sacred elixir world was not just for show. Fort Lord Yin, let's join forces and fight Palace Lord Nanwu. How about it? Old Tong said. All right. Yin Suer nodded heavily. In a one-on-one battle, Neither of them was a match for the Namo Palace Master. If they worked together, they might be able to put up a fight. Boom! Boom! At the center of the battlefield, Yin Suer and Elder Tong joined forces to fight Palace Master Nanwu. However, it was very obvious that even if the two of them worked together, they would not be able to gain any advantage over Palace Master Nanwu. However, no matter what, the two of them were still entangled with the most terrifying battle prowess of Namo Palace Master. As for the other battlefields, Chapter 2789, Jian Wushuang, and the Eastern God Boom Jian Wushuang's four realms continued to suppress the experts of the four forces in an attempt to suppress their strength. However, as soon as his realm swept out, the silver-haired old woman, Master Dongfang, smiled indifferently and said, "You're not the only one who has realm techniques." As soon as she finished speaking, the master of the Dongfang family waved his hand slightly, and immediately, a vast green ocean swept out. The green ocean was magnificent, and its waves surged wildly. On top of the green ocean, there was a faint layer of blood-colored fog. The green ocean was cast by a domain-type treasure in the hands of the master of the Dongfang family, and the blood-colored fog was a secret skill cast by the master of the Dongfang family. The combination of the two, together with the fact that the master of the Dongfang family's Dao world was not weak, swept out at this moment, and directly collided with Jian Wushuang's four-layered domain. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The two different domains pressed against each other crazily, but it was obvious that Jian Wushuang's domain was stronger, and completely suppressed the master of the Dongfang family's domain. However, the Dongfang family's domain also took a lot of pressure on the experts of the Four Forces Allied Army. The pressure on the experts of the Four Forces Allied Army was obviously not as great as before. After the battle between the two camps, most of the experts of Crimson Rock Castle had not recovered to their peak condition, and some of them were seriously injured. Even with Yin Suer's backup plan and the 8 great divine masters joining, their overall battle strength was still much weaker than that of the Four Forces Allied Army. The only good news was that Jian Wushuang still had a certain advantage in his domain, which made their opponent's battle strength more or less suppressed. Even if they could not defeat these elementary and advanced great divine masters, they could still hold on for a while. As for the strongest battle strength, Palace Master Nanwu was blocked by Yin Sewer and Elder Tong, while the Tower Master of Life and Death fought against Yun Shan. Although Yun Shan had been severely injured, he had recovered more than 80% of his strength after a period of time. He was strong enough to fight the Life and Death Tower Master head-on. The Dongfang family master was the weakest among the 4 peak divine masters in the 4 forces allied army. She was fighting against the golden armored corpse puppet controlled by Jian Wushuang. The golden armored corpse puppet could also tie down the Dongfang family master, with its advantage in a certain domain. Among the 4 forces, there was only one peak great divine master left. This peak great divine master was the sect master of the divine demon sect, East God. Sword 1. His cold voice echoed throughout the battlefield. East God's eyes were cold, and he had locked his eyes on Jian Wushuang the moment the battle began. His opponent was Jian Wushuang. Dong Shen, do you want to take revenge for the 9 great divine masters of your divine demon sect? Jian Wushuang stood in the void and looked at Dong Shen coldly. Die! Dong Shen did not waste any words. The violent aura on his body instantly surged up. A giant axe appeared in each of his hands. His body immediately transformed into an ancient ferocious beast. It was an enraged ancient ferocious beast that suddenly attacked. Its speed was also extremely fast. Jian Wushuang stood there and felt that a violent and tyrannical aura had completely locked onto him. The monstrous killing intent made Jian Wushuang's eyes freeze. He tightened the Blood Mountain sword in his hand and directly rushed out. In the center of the void, Jian Wushuang came into direct contact with his body. Destroy! Dong Shen shouted. The giant axe in his hand was so domineering that it seemed as if it could split the heaven and earth. One of the giant axes hacked down furiously. Swish! A mighty axe shadow immediately slashed out. This axe shadow was extremely overbearing and unreasonable. Its power was even more terrifying. Jian Wushuang held the Blood Mountain sword with both hands at the same time. Surging divine power surged out of his body, and his power reached its peak at this moment. Buzz! A dazzling sword light that shook the heaven and earth suddenly rushed out. The sword light was extremely huge and covered half of the sky. Its power was also astonishing. In the blink of an eye, the mighty axe shadow came into direct contact with the huge and dazzling sword light. Clang! With a loud sound, the violent divine power spread out crazily in all directions like a tide. At the center of the collision, a huge divine power storm swept up. Jian Wushuang's face darkened slightly. He could feel a huge force coming toward him, which made his divine body tremble crazily. He immediately retreated a great distance. Before he could stop, the East God in front of him had already chased after him. The 2 giant axes in the East God's hands were already filled with surging divine power. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes and gently raised his hand. The 9 underworld blood divine swords immediately floated in front of him and formed a sword formation. Buzz! Under the cover of a large amount of reincarnation power, a giant black would rush toward the East God like a meteorite. Get lost! The East God shouted and casually slashed with the huge axe in his hand. The terrifying power contained in the huge axe struck the huge black tree, which was immediately sent flying. In the middle of the attack, the huge black tree was still shaking crazily and was about to collapse. This scene caused Jian Wushuang's expression to change slightly. The power of the reincarnation sword formation is powerful. The world sync of the second sword formation, I'm using now, is purely about power. It's a pity that the 9 underworld blood divine swords that make up the sword formation are too weak. Otherwise, even if my divine power is weaker than his, I wouldn't be nearly disintegrated by the axe, Jian Wushuang thought. He was still using the 9 Netherblood divine swords to form the reincarnation sword formation. It should be known that he had used the 9 Netherblood divine swords when he first obtained the reincarnation sword formation, when he was an Earth God Master. The Netherblood divine sword was only a standard magic weapon at the elementary divine treasure level. It was not bad when Jian Wushuang only had the battle strength of an Earth God Master and a Divine God Master. However, now that he had reached the Great God Master level, especially now that he was still fighting with a peak Great Divine Master, the Netherblood Divine Sword was obviously not up to par. Jian Wushuang was sure that if he had formed the Samsara Sword formation with 9 standard magic weapons at the superior Divine Treasure level, then he should be able to fight head-on with the East God by relying on the second sword formation of the Samsara Sword formation. However, the East God laughed out loud, and his words were full of ridicule when he casually hacked away Jian Wushuang's Samsara Sword formation with his axe. Haha, you are just a senior Great Divine Master. How dare you compete with me in strength? You are courting death. Chapter 2790, Strength? Over the years, Jian Wushuang had broken through to the realm of a Divine Master. He had obtained 50,000 divine elixirs from the Battle Saber, and many divine elixirs from Killing Saber Master, and the others in the secret realm. Under the cover of the Black Stone, he was indeed emitting the divine power aura of a senior Divine Master. Therefore, the East God naturally regarded Jian Wushuang as a senior Great Divine Master. The gap between a senior Great Divine Master and a peak Great Divine Master seemed to be one step away, but in fact, the gap was astonishing. The difference in the power of divine power alone was more than 10 times, and it was almost impossible to overcome. The East God's mocking words were also reasonable. However, after hearing the East God's words, Jian Wushuang smiled indifferently and said, "East God, do you think your divine power is so strong that you will definitely surpass me?" East God frowned. Jian Wushuang's smile made him feel a little uneasy. Sure enough, Jian Wushuang's body suddenly shook. Immediately after, the divine power aura emitted from his body began to surge at an alarming speed. The speed of the surge was also very terrifying. In the blink of an eye, he had risen from an advanced Great Divine Master to a peak Great Divine Master. 7-star secret skill. Jian Wushuang finally used the 7-star secret skill, which was enough to upgrade himself to a higher level. However, the 7-star secret skill had always been one of the top secret skills that Jian Wushuang relied on. Once this secret skill was used, his strength would skyrocket. However, since the beginning of the battle, Jian Wushuang had never used this skill, whether it was when he defeated the Blood Thunder King and the others, or when he fought with the allied forces of the four major forces. He was saving a trump card for himself. Even so, with his divine power, which was far stronger than that of his peers as a perfect chaotic creature, and his 100,000 feet tall Heaven Punisher, and the 9 luminaries star armor, which increased his power by 6 times. His power was already infinitely close to that of a peak Great Divine Master. In addition to his various secret skills, he could fight a slightly weaker peak Great Divine Master head-on in such a state. Now he had finally used the 7-star secret skill as his trump card. His cultivation was at the peak of the Divine Master realm. Now that he had used the 7-star secret skill, his realm had reached the level of an elementary Great Divine Master. Under the cover of the Black Stone, his divine power aura naturally rose to the level of a peak Great Divine Master. The strength of his divine power naturally soared, and so did his overall strength. Boom! Boom! Jian Wushuang stood in the void, his divine power surging, and the tyrannical aura of divine power unscrupulously swept out. At the same time, as the strength of his divine power greatly increased, the power of his domain, which had been spreading across the entire battlefield, also skyrocketed. Previously, his domain had only suppressed Master Dongfang's domain, but now it was completely suppressed. The experts of the allied army of the four forces were also much more suppressed on the battlefield. Jian Wushuang's eyes were cold as he stared at the East God in the void. The East God also sensed the change in Jian Wushuang's divine power aura, and his pupils could not help shrinking. East God, didn't you just say that I'm not qualified to compete with you in strength? Now, let's try again. Jian Wushuang smiled indifferently. He remained still, but the 9 underworld blood divine swords in front of him reassembled again. It was also a giant black tree filled with vast samsara power, but when the giant black tree rushed out again, its momentum and power were 10 times stronger than before. Boom! The giant black tree suddenly rushed out, and the void trembled wherever it passed. East God clenched his teeth tightly, and a surge of divine power gathered on the giant axe in his right hand. The aura on his body also soared to the limit. Get lost! With another furious roar, East God once again swung the giant axe in his hand. This giant axe was powerful and heavy, and it carried a world-shaking might. It wanted to send the giant black tree flying once again. But this time, bang! As the giant black tree and the giant axe collided, 2 explosive powers exploded at the same time. The giant black tree and the giant axe had collided once before, but the giant black tree was sent flying and almost disintegrated. But now, the outcome was completely reversed. What? East God widened his eyes and looked at his palm in disbelief. He could feel a violent force coming from his palm and the giant axe. This force was so strong that the giant axe in his hand almost fell out of his hand. The force went along his arm and hit his divine body. Humph! East God could not help but grunt, but he immediately retreated. This collision was actually a direct blow to East God. Haha, East God, as a peak Great Divine Master, your divine power is only so. Jian Wushuang said with a sneer. How is this possible? East God was a little confused and could not believe what was happening. He was clearly overwhelmed by the previous collision, but now, in the blink of an eye, the situation had been completely reversed. He was being suppressed and crushed. How could the divine power of Sword 1 be so strong? It was much stronger than that of a peak Great Divine Master like him. In his opinion, this power was not much weaker than Palace Master Nan Wu, the #1 expert on the Pil-Sun continent. East God, weren't you very proud just now? Now let's do it again. Jian Wushuang's eyes turned cold. The giant black wood formed by the 9 Netherblood divine swords trembled slightly, and then gathered a shocking power to charge at the East God. Seeing the giant black wood charging toward him again, the East God clenched his teeth, and a trace of madness surged in his eyes. I don't believe it. The violent divine power rose from the East God's body, and he completely transformed into a peerless fierce beast. At the same time, His divine body was covered by a layer of blood-red light. The appearance of this blood-red light also increased his divine power aura slightly. Kill. East God was incomparably ruthless as he unleashed his full strength. He held a huge axe in each of his hands, and the two huge axes slashed out time and time again. Colliding head-on with the ferocious charging black huge tree, they clashed together. Bang! 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 The collision after collision caused a shocking explosion. And even if East God used a secret art, in terms of offensive power, his huge axe was clearly inferior to the second reincarnation sword formation by a large margin. Every collision was an absolute disadvantage for him. Chapter 2791. Sneak attack. Jian Wushuang's second reincarnation sword formation was too powerful, and it was a sword formation that could be controlled by consciousness. In a head-on collision, it did not need to withstand the rebounding force of the impact, but the East God did, and the force was surprisingly strong. Although the East God's divine body was strong, and its protective ability was not weak, it could not completely offset the impact. Therefore, every head-on collision, his divine body would suffer a certain degree of impact. In just a dozen impacts, the East God's divine body had already suffered a certain degree of damage, but the East God did not pay any attention to it. He was like a madman. He continued to collide head-on with the reincarnation sword formation. The East God clearly knows that he can't fight head-on with my reincarnation sword formation, but he still wants to fight head-on? As a peak divine master and the ruler of a top force, how could he be so stupid? Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes slightly, just as he was puzzled. Buzz! An invisible force directly attacked Jian Wushuang without any warning. Jian Wushuang did not react at all, but the purple emperor bell in his body, which had been refined by him, suddenly burst out with powerful power. A huge purple barrier formed a purple bell that completely covered Jian Wushuang. The invisible power acted on the purple bell at the first moment. Although the power eventually passed through the purple bell, the power had been weakened by more than half. It's a soul attack. Jian Wushuang was startled, and his pupil shrank. After being greatly weakened by the purple bell, the soul attack directly entered Jian Wushuang's body and ferociously attacked the real soul in his sea of consciousness. However, around Jian Wushuang's real soul, a towering and sturdy tower stood there. It was the exquisite pagoda. The exquisite pagoda was purely a soul defense secret skill, which had an amazing ability to defend against the soul. After being weakened by the purple emperor bell, the soul attack hit the exquisite pagoda, which shook it crazily, but it did not destroy the exquisite pagoda. This sudden and extremely powerful soul attack was easily blocked by Jian Wushuang's double soul defense. Humph! Jian Wushuang snorted and scanned the surroundings with his cold eyes. In the blink of an eye, he had focused his eyes on a black-clothed woman. The black-clothed woman had a unique aura. Although she was only a junior great divine master, the soul power around her was extremely strong. In terms of soul power, she was extremely strong among senior great divine masters. Therefore, she could use her soul attack to fight against ordinary senior great divine masters. She even had a high chance of winning. Just now, the black-clothed woman suddenly used her soul attack to sneak attack Jian Wushuang. Now that she failed to hit him, and Jian Wushuang looked at her again, a trace of panic flashed in the black-clothed woman's eyes. Her body swayed, and the black-clothed woman wanted to escape. You want to escape? Jian Wushuang's eyes were cold, and a strong killing intent rose from his body. He slowly raised his left palm and pointed in the direction of the black-clothed woman. He immediately used the heaven-pointing skill. Although the black-clothed woman was good at soul attacks, and her soul techniques were very impressive, she was only a novice great divine master, and had no knowledge of the space-time rules. Naturally, she could not block Jian Wushuang's move. In an instant, her fleeing figure froze in the void. Jian Wushuang's figure flashed past the black-clothed woman easily. The cold sword light had already killed the black-clothed woman. Sneak attack me? Jian Wushuang's voice was extremely cold. In the void not far away, the East God, who had been madly colliding with the giant black wood formed by the Samsara sword formation, saw this and his expression could not help but change. Damn it, he actually blocked it. The East God did not dare to do so. Jian Wushuang had also realized that. He knew that his divine power was no match for me, so he risked his divine body to fight me head-on. He thought that the East God was stupid, but now it seems that the head-on fight was just a pretense. His real goal was to attract my attention and create a perfect opportunity for the woman to kill me directly with a soul attack. Jian Wushuang's face was a little gloomy. He was right. That was the plan of the East God. The East God knew that he might not be able to kill Jian Wushuang, so he had a backup plan. In his opinion, Jian Wushuang's rise was too fast, and his realm was rising too fast. His realm was rising so fast, but in terms of the soul, it was probably not as fast. The East God had guessed that Jian Wushuang's soul might be his weakness, so he had specially arranged this move. He had also told the black-clothed woman in advance. However, he had not expected that Jian Wushuang's soul defense skill would be so amazing. The black-clothed woman's soul attack was so sudden that it was difficult for a senior divine master to block it, but Jian Wushuang had blocked it. Now that the black-clothed woman had been killed by Jian Wushuang, his plan had failed. It was obviously not rational to continue fighting with Jian Wushuang's reincarnation sword formation. Therefore, he was ready to retreat. However, at this time, Jian Wushuang's eyes suddenly focused. East God, take my move too. Jian Wushuang's cold voice echoed in the sky. His figure flashed, and under the effect of the space-time rule power, he was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in the void in front of East God. Then he pointed out with one hand. This move, East God's face changed greatly. Whether it was the face-to-face confrontation between the Sword Union and the Divine Demon sect many years ago, or the collision between Jian Wushuang and the Blood Thunder King and the Heaven Void Palace, he had seen Jian Wushuang use this move many times. He was well aware of how terrifying this move was. It could be said that it was largely because of this move that Jian Wushuang was able to play a key role in the two wars and slaughter numerous great divine masters without restraint. This move could freeze time and space for a short period of time. It was because he knew that the moment he saw Jian Wushuang perform this move, the East God subconsciously wanted to dodge. However, he had underestimated the power of the heaven-designated skill. Before Jian Wushuang had used the 7-star secret skill, he had been able to defeat an advanced great divine master. Only an expert like Su Dao, who had a profound understanding of space-time rules, would be slightly affected. However, now that Jian Wushuang had used the 7-star secret skill, his divine power was extremely powerful even among peak great divine masters. If he used this move again, even a peak great divine master would not be able to withstand it. Chapter 2792, Ba Xiongwang. Without any warning, the space-time where East God was located completely came to a standstill. Even East God himself was in a state of complete stagnation. He did not move at all, and his consciousness was also in a state of stagnation. Meanwhile, in the void around East God, the giant black tree formed by the 9 Hell-Blood Divine swords once again charged out with a world-shaking might. In the blink of an eye, the giant blackwood appeared in front of the East God, less than 10 meters away from him. At this point, the East God finally broke free from the space-time stagnation. Oh no! As soon as he broke free, he saw the giant blackwood crazily rushing toward him. So he naturally knew what had happened. Without any hesitation, the East God swung the giant axe in his right hand. If he had faced Jian Wushuang's reincarnation sword formation earlier, he would have used all his strength to fight back with the giant axe. Even so, he was still suppressed. However, he did not have the time to use the giant axe with all his strength. It was already good enough for him to use part of the power of the giant axe. Bang! There was a loud sound, The right arm of the East God holding the giant axe was numb, that violent power directly transmitted into his divine body. Even Dong Shun's divine body began to tremble violently under the impact of this tyrannical power. A trace of blood also leaked out from the corner of his mouth. However, before he could completely endure the impact of this attack, buzz! A sword light suddenly lit up. This sword light was incomparably beautiful. There was also a bit of confusion in the sword light, causing one to be intoxicated. The instant the sword light lit up, East God had already sensed it, and even he was immediately attracted by this intoxicated sword light. He stared fixedly at this sword light, but a trace of terror arose in his heart. The reason why he was terrified was because this sword light was too fast. It was indeed fast, unbelievably fast. Even if he attacked normally, he might not have the confidence to completely block this sword light. And now, he had just received the impact of the reincarnation sword formation, and before he could completely recover, he was hit by this sudden sword. He had no way to swing the huge axe to block it. He couldn't even place the huge axe horizontally in front of his chest. The only thing he could do was to have a layer of blood-red barrier appear on the surface of his body, and the protective armor on his body instantly covered his entire body. Chi! The beautiful sword light cut through the blood-red barrier, but it did not last long before it collapsed. Then the sword light continued to cut on the protective armor of the East God. The protective armor of the East God was a top-tier divine treasure level protective armor, which had an amazing defensive ability. Jian Wushuang's sword attack could not cut through the armor, but the enormous power was still weakened through the armor. It was transmitted to the divine body of the East God. Even the East God's face turned pale, and he spat out a mouthful of blood after being hit by this powerful attack. His body flew backward like a kite that had lost its string. His aura was also greatly weakened. It was obvious that he had suffered a serious injury. He's not dead. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes. He felt a little regretful, but more than that he felt relieved. After all, the East God was a powerful great divine master at the peak, and he was also the sect master of the divine demon sect. The divine demon sect had a deep heritage, so it must be protected by a protective armor at the level of a superior divine treasure. With his current strength, it was indeed too difficult to kill a great divine master at the peak who had a protective armor at the peak. If he used all his trump cards and methods, it might be possible. But no matter what, Dong Shun had been seriously injured by him, and his strength would be greatly reduced. Whoosh! After Dong Shun finally stabilized himself, he immediately rushed toward the battlefield at his fastest speed. There was a trace of fear in his eyes. Obviously, he was frightened by Jian Wushuang's strength, so he did not dare to continue fighting with Jian Wushuang. You ran away so fast. Seeing that the East God chose to avoid the fight, Jian Wushuang smiled coldly. Then he looked at the surrounding battlefields and his face darkened. Indeed, he fought with the East God and defeated him. He also killed a junior great divine master who was good at soul attacks. However, in the other battlefields around him, the Redstone Castle, the Sword League, and the Alliance of the Four Forces were at an absolute disadvantage. It was a huge disadvantage. It was even higher than the highest battle strength. Boom! Boom! Two violent explosions suddenly sounded in the sky, and then two figures shot out like meteorites. The two people who shot out were Yin Suer and Elder Tong. At this moment, they were in a terrible state, especially Yin Suer. Her face was pale, her mouth and robe were stained with blood, and her aura was quite weak. How could it be? Jian Wushuang frowned. Yin Suer and Elder Tong were both peak great divine masters. Needless to say, Yin Suer had always been very strong. In the Pill Sun continent, she should be the strongest, except for Palace Master Nan Wu, who had defeated Yun Shan in a one-on-one fight. As for Elder Tong, when he was only an advanced great divine master, his battle strength was the best among the advanced great divine masters, and his comprehension of the rules was also very high. Once he broke through to become a peak great divine master, his battle strength was also very impressive. The two of them worked together with the help of his domain, but they were forced into such a sorry state by Palace Master Nan Wu. No! Jian Wushuang's pupils suddenly constricted, His eyes were like two bolts of lightning, as he immediately looked toward the void where Palace Master Nanwu was. However, at this moment, he found that Palace Master Nanwu was not the only one in the void. There was also a cold and arrogant middle-aged man, in a blood-red robe standing there. The cold and arrogant middle-aged man also emitted an extremely powerful aura. Although this aura was not as strong as Palace Master Nanwu's, it was not weaker than Elder Tong's at his peak. This person, Jian Wushuang stared at the middle-aged man in a blood-red robe. Ba Xiong, it's you. Elder Tong also gnashed his teeth and stared at the man. Elder Tong, long time no see. How have you been? A cold smile appeared on the corner of the middle-aged man's mouth. Ba Xiong, it's him? Jian Wushuang's face darkened. Yin Sewer and many experts from the Redstone Castle and the Sword Union also had ugly looks on their faces. Ba Xiong was a well-known expert in the Pilsun continent, and he was only an advanced Great Divine Master before. They were both advanced Great Divine Masters, but Ba Xiong's power was above that of Elder Tong. Some people in the Pilsun continent even said that Ba Xiong should be the strongest among the advanced Great Divine Masters, just like how Great Divine Master Zhu Exan had always been called the strongest among the junior Great Divine Masters. Jian Wushuang had also heard of Ba Xiong's name. Chapter 2793. Leave it to me. Ba Xiong, I didn't expect you to have already broken through to the level of a peak great deity? Elder Tong's voice was ice cold. Haha, you're not the only one who's lucky. The blood-robed middle-aged man, Ba Xiong, smiled coldly. Old Monster Tong, you've stayed at the advanced great deity level for so many years, and you've tried to break through so many times. In the end, you've all failed, but you actually succeeded this time? And with your character, you actually listened to the Sword Union? If I'm not wrong, it must be this Sword Union that helped you break through. Moreover, the Sword Union should have given you an extreme royal golden core. With your ability, only by obtaining an extreme royal golden core can you have a chance of breaking through. Otherwise, you'll probably be stuck at the advanced Great Divine Master level for the rest of your life. Aren't you the same? Elder Tong said coldly. Yes, it's the same. Your luck isn't bad. The Sword Union gave you an extreme Emperor golden core, but my luck isn't as good as yours. Not long ago, Palace Master Nanwu also obtained an extreme Emperor Golden Core. And Palace Master Nanwu gave it to me. Because of this, I was able to break through and reach the peak Great Deity level. And as a condition, I'll be a consecrator of the Nanwu Palace for 10,000 years. During this period, if Palace Master Nanwu has anything to ask of me, I naturally can't refuse. Ba Xiong said with a smile. Is that so? Elder Tong and everyone present understood. Jian Wushuang's face darkened slightly. Nan Wugong had indeed obtained an Aurous Core of the Royal Realm, which had been auctioned right under his nose. He had never known what Nan Wugong had done with the Aurous Core of the Royal Realm, but now it seemed that Palace Master Nan Wugong was also very clever. He had used an Aurous Core of the Royal Realm to hire a powerful helper. Ba Xiong was slightly stronger than Elder Tong when he was at the Senior Great Divine Master level. Now that he had broken through to the peak Great Divine Master level, his battle strength was naturally slightly stronger than Elder Tong. Yin Suer and Elder Tong worked together. It was already very difficult to deal with Palace Master Nanwu, and with Ba Xiong, they would naturally be crushed. Yin Suer, you probably didn't expect it, right? You're not the only one who has prepared a backup plan for this battle. Palace Master Nanwu also sneered. Yin Suer and Elder Tong's expressions were extremely unsightly, but at this moment, Yin Suer, you're seriously injured and your battle strength has been greatly reduced. It's no longer suitable for you to fight with Palace Master Nanwu. I'll leave the East God to you. Jian Wushuang's voice suddenly rang out. At this critical moment, Jian Wushuang no longer humbly called Yin Suer as his lord. Instead, he directly called her by her name. Even his tone was somewhat unquestionable. Elder Tong, I'll leave Ba Xiong to you. Your injuries are light, so he shouldn't be able to do anything to you in the short term, Jian Wushuang said again. Upon hearing this, Yin Suer and Elder Tong were both surprised. Jian Yi, we fought against Dong Shun and Ba Xiong respectively. What about Palace Master Nanwu? He's the strongest among all the people present. If we don't find someone to stop him, he'll probably be able to kill all the great divine masters in our camp, Yin Suer said in a deep voice. Yes, although Ba Xiong and Dong Shun are difficult to deal with, Palace Master Nanwu is the most terrifying, Elder Tong said solemnly. Don't worry, just do as I say. As for Palace Master Nanwu, leave it to me, Jian Wushuang said in a deep voice. What? Yin Suer and Elder Tong were both shocked. Leave him to deal with Nanwu Palace, who could not even be defeated by the two of them working together. Was he kidding? Listen to me. Hurry up, or it will be too late, Jian Wushuang shouted. Hearing this, Yin Suer and Elder Tong looked at Jian Wushuang deeply. Although they had many doubts and did not think that Jian Wushuang could stop Palace Master Nanwu, at this critical moment, they could not afford to delay any longer. If they delayed any longer, the entire battlefield would be at a greater disadvantage. Immediately the two people moved. Yin Suer directly attacked the East God. She was stronger than the East God. Although she was seriously injured, the East God was more seriously injured, so it was easy for her to suppress the East God. As for Elder Tong, he was also fighting with Ba Xiong. In the center of the battlefield, Jian Wushuang had already arrived in front of Palace Master Nanwu. Sword 1. Palace Master Nanwu crossed her arms and stared at Jian Yi. Then she glanced at the miserable-looking Eastern God and could not help smiling. You seriously injured Eastern God? It seems that I have underestimated you. When you fought with the Heaven Void Palace, Blood Thunder King, and the others, you didn't use your full strength. I see. But you didn't use your full strength when you fought with Yin Suer and Elder Tong, did you? Jian Wushuang stared at Palace Master Nanwu. The corners of Palace Master Nanwu's mouth curled up, but she did not say anything. Do you think you can stop me by yourself? Palace Master Nanwu said with a condescending tone. How would I know if I don't try? Jian Wushuang smiled indifferently, but he did not waste any more words. With a wave of his hand, the giant black wood formed by the 9 Netherblood Divine swords appeared immediately. The vast power of reincarnation filled the air, and the giant black wood carried a shocking power. Under Jian Wushuang's full power, it suddenly rushed out. It was like a giant black meteorite that fiercely charged toward Palace Master Nanwu. What a joke! Palace Master Nanwu smiled disdainfully and suddenly flipped his right palm. He casually slapped the black meteorite. The fierce and powerful black meteorite instantly stopped in the void and then flew backward. It took a long time for it to calm down. Palace Master Nanwu stood in the void and did not move. After he struck the Samsara sword formation, he looked at his palm and slightly raised his eyebrows, as expected of someone who can seriously injure the East God. The power of your sword formation is indeed not weak. With this sword formation alone, you can already suppress many-peak great divine paragons. Unfortunately, you met me. With that, Palace Master Nanwu waved his hand again. This time, he did not take it lightly. Instead, he struck out with his palm. A layer of black divine thunder surged in the center of his palm. This black divine thunder contained the power to destroy the world. As he struck out with his palm, the world suddenly exploded. Endless black divine thunder blotted out the sky and covered the earth. In the blink of an eye, it formed a white and tall thunder beast. The thunder beast roared crazily and attacked Jian Wushuang. Go! Jian Wushuang's eyes were cold. He once again drove the reincarnation sword formation and rushed out. Behind him, the 30,000-meter-tall Golden Emperor also burst out a dazzling golden light. The same black giant tree attacked, and its power was slightly stronger than before. Jian Wushuang had used all of his strength in this attack. Chapter 2794. Expert of Danyang. In the blink of an eye, the giant black tree was about to collide with the giant black thunder beast. As a result, roar! The giant black thunder beast roared and opened its bloody mouth, swallowing the giant black tree in one gulp. What? Jian Wushuang's expression changed. Although the sword formation was swallowed by the thunder beast, Jian Wushuang was still able to sense it. He immediately wanted to activate the power of the sword formation and blast it away. However, he soon found that the destructive power of the Black Thunder Beast was far stronger than his sword formation. His sword formation collapsed under the impact of the power. The 9 underworld blood swords were also attacked by the Black Thunder. The 9 underworld blood swords exploded in an instant. *T. Jian Wushuang's face darkened. The Samsara sword formation was one of his many skills, and it was more powerful than his swordsmanship. However, now that the 9 underworld blood swords had exploded, he could not build a new sword formation. Your sword formation is indeed powerful, but now that I've destroyed it, I'd like to see what else you can do. Palace Master Nan Wu sneered. After the Black Thunder Beast swallowed the sword formation and destroyed the 9 Netherblood divine swords, he pointed with his right hand, and the Thunder Beast continued to charge toward Jian Wushuang. In the blink of an eye, the Black Thunder Beast had appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. It immediately turned into a majestic Black Thunder power and completely covered Jian Wushuang, giving him no chance to escape. Crackle crackle. The Black Thunder crazily destroyed everything. The void where Jian Wushuang was completely enveloped by the Black Thunder. Not far away from the void, Palace Master Nan Wu looked at the void with a sneer. Even an ordinary peak Great Divine Paragon wouldn't be able to survive this move of mine. As for this sword one, even if he survived, his ending would probably be extremely miserable. Palace Master Nan Wu had absolute confidence in this move. To be exact, she had absolute confidence in her own strength. He had broken through to become a peak Great Divine Paragon a long time ago, and he was already an extremely powerful existence among peak Great Divine Paragons. Even in the entire Golden Crow 9 realms, there were only a handful of peak Great Divine Paragons who could defeat him. However, he was truly invincible in the Pil Sun continent. No one was his match. For example, when he fought with Yin Suer and Elder Tong just now, he didn't use his full strength, but Yin Suer and Elder Tong were still suppressed by him. It was the same even when 2 peak Great Deity Realm experts joined hands. What was this sword one? The black lightning power that filled the sky finally dissipated, and the void reappeared in everyone's sight. However, upon seeing the scene in the void, the expression of Palace Master Nan Wu, who had been somewhat proud, changed slightly. Jian Wushuang was still standing in the void with a cold expression, holding a long sword in his hand. However, he did not look embarrassed at all. Not even the corner of his clothes had changed. Clearly, the destructive attack of the Black Thunderbolt did not have any effect on him. To be exact, it had no effect on him at all, because there was a purple barrier on the surface of Jian Wushuang's body. The purple barrier was a purple bell, which was extremely powerful, and blocked the impact of the Black Thunderbolt. After blocking it, although the color of the purple bell had dimmed, and its power had been greatly weakened, the purple bell still existed. A protective treasure? Palace Master Nan Wu's face darkened slightly. It was able to completely block my attack. The power of the protective treasure is really impressive. Unfortunately, it's useless. No matter how strong the protective treasure is, it can only passively defend itself. As it continues to be attacked, the power of your treasure will continue to weaken. The purple bell will directly disappear. At that time, you will still die. Palace Master Nan Wu's cold voice echoed in the world. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang smiled coldly and said, "Passive defense? I don't intend to keep defending passively." As he said this, Jian Wushuang's expression changed and a ray of light surged out of his divine body and fell into his hand. It was an ancient painting scroll. This ancient painting scroll was the Mountain River map. The Mountain and River map had always been one of Jian Wushuang's biggest trump cards. He rarely used this trump card. He didn't even plan to use it unless it was absolutely necessary, because the Mountain and River map would cause too much commotion. Others could tell at a glance that this was definitely an extraordinary treasure. Because of this, even if he used this treasure, he would usually only use it in a one-on-one situation where no one around could see him. But now, I have no choice. Palace Master Nan Wu is too strong. If I want to fight him head-on, I have to use this treasure, let alone defeat him. Jian Wushuang muttered, and then waved his hand. The ancient scroll immediately turned into a golden light, and merged into the surrounding void. In an instant, the sky and earth changed color. Within the boundless void space, an incomparably beautiful painting world appeared out of thin air. This painting world was extremely lifelike. There were mountains and rivers within the world, and there were even 9 gigantic continents. This is... Palace head Nanwu raised her head to look at the void space above, and couldn't help but frown. The experts from both sides who were currently engaged in a frenzied battle on the battlefield at the side were also the first to notice the changes in the void space. What is this? A world? What a real world! What kind of treasure is this? The experts from both sides were shocked. They all knew that this wonderful world was formed because Jian Wushuang took out a treasure. But they didn't know what this treasure was, or what kind of treasure it was, or what its function was. However, the moment this marvelous world appeared, they could already tell that this treasure was extraordinary. There was nothing they could do, because the world in the void was too real and too spectacular. Standing under this void, they could not help but feel a trace of awe. And at this moment, buzz buzz! A shocking sword intent suddenly swept up, and everyone present felt that the world around them had begun to change. They had originally been in the vast void above Executor's city, but in the blink of an eye, they had already appeared on a desolate empty land. On this empty land, there were many swords. There were long swords, flexible swords, heavy swords, and all sorts of things, but without a doubt, each of these swords had an astonishing aura. But on this vast empty land, there were thousands of long swords stabbed into the ground. This was a sword tomb, a huge sword tomb. Chapter 2795. World of Sword Principle. The sword essence in the huge sword tomb soared to the sky. Jian Wushuang was at the core of the sword tomb, like the master of sword principle. In a short moment, the world of sword principle and the world of treasures had been formed. This is the transformation of heaven and earth. I feel like I'm in another world. The sword essence in this world is too strong. Change the world. What kind of technique is this? The experts on the battlefield instantly understood their situation. They also understood that the world they were in had already changed. They were all extremely shocked. Even Palace Master Nanwu looked at Jian Wushuang with great shock and shock. Change the world. What a great treasure. There was even a trace of heat, in the deepest part of Palace Master Nanwu's eyes. However, even if you use that treasure and change the surrounding environment, what can you do? Can you do anything to me? Although he was surprised by Jian Wushuang's skill, Palace Master Nanwu did not care. After all, he had absolute strength as a support, so he was absolutely confident. I'll let you know. Jian Wushuang just smiled slightly and slowly raised his hand. Condense. With a light smile, a majestic sword essence immediately condensed in the void in front of Jian Wushuang. With the help of the World of Sword principle, the sword essence became solid. Buzz buzz, a large amount of reincarnation power spread out. In the void, the powerful reincarnation sword formation appeared again. This time, Jian Wushuang did not use a magic weapon. He just relied on the sword essence to condense the reincarnation sword formation. Even so, the power was still amazing. After the sword formation was completely formed, Jian Wushuang pointed out with one hand. The Samsara sword formation once again shot toward Palace Master Nanwu. Palace Master Nanwu stood there with a cold expression. A faint black thunderbolt power gathered on his right palm. He immediately struck out with his palm. The powerful palm, which contained a powerful destructive power, collided with the Samsara sword formation. The Samsara sword formation directly collapsed and dissipated into nothingness. However, Palace Master Nanwu also took a step back. Just by relying on the sword intent, this sword formation isn't weaker than when he used the divine weapon. Palace Master Nanwu frowned. However, at this moment, beside Palace Master Nanwu, buzz buzz buzz, a shocking sword intent swept out. This sword intent was extremely huge and condensed at an astonishing speed. In the blink of an eye, a huge phantom of an emperor appeared in the void on the left and right sides of the golden southern palace. These two phantom emperors held the emperor's sword in their hands. It contained a powerful emperor's aura. Without any fancy moves, the two phantom emperors slashed the emperor's sword directly at Palace Master Nanwu. The ice-cold sword edge swept across all directions. What is this? Palace Master Nanwu's face darkened. He could see that the two phantom emperors were formed purely by sword essence. The key was that the sword essence contained in the two phantom emperors was too vast and huge. Therefore, the sword skill that the phantom emperors slashed out, even he did not dare to underestimate them. The Thousand Treasures Great World is one of the secret skills of the Mountain River map. This move is very useful. It is not only to change the surrounding environment and the heaven and earth, so that the heaven and earth environment has a great advantage over one's own strength. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. It had been a while since he had obtained the Mountain River map in this life. In the beginning, his comprehension of the Thousand Treasures Great World was indeed very crude. He could only barely construct a heaven and earth environment that was suitable for him to fight in. But now, as his strength continued to increase, his comprehension of the laws also continued to increase. His control of the Thousand Treasures Great World also became stronger and stronger. He could use many of the techniques in the Thousand Treasures Great World. For example, in the world of Sword Dao, he could use the sword intent in the world of Sword Dao to condense everything in the world. He could condense a divine weapon, condense an emperor's shadow, and fight with his opponent. Furthermore, this world of Sword Dao had greatly increased his strength in Sword Dao. It could be said that in this world of Sword Dao, he was the ruler. Facing the two emperor's swords that were slashing at him from the left and right, Palace Master Nanwu first retreated. Then a large amount of black lightning surged out. These black lightning instantly condensed into two black lightning dragons in the void. They roared as they met the two emperor's swords head-on. Hualala! The two emperor's swords were completely shattered. Even the two emperor's shadows that appeared beside Palace Master Nanwu were destroyed by the black lightning dragons. Sword 1, is that all you can do? Palace Master Nanwu was calm, and there was a hint of contempt on the corner of her mouth. Hee, don't worry. My world of sword principle is not as simple as what you see now. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly, but he clenched his right hand tightly. The Blood Mountain sword in his hand seemed to have sensed the battle intent rising from the bottom of his heart. The body of the sword also began to tremble crazily. Rumble! The pressure of the four realms was still pressing crazily. With the help of the world of sword principle, The perfect sword world that Jian Wushuang created within a range of 100,000 kilometers had a great deterrent effect. Even Palace Master Nanwu was shocked at this moment. This kid's sword world is really strong, Palace Master Nanwu muttered. But at this moment, Jian Wushuang had already moved. Whoosh! Under the effect of the space-time rule, Jian Wushuang was extremely fast. He appeared in front of Palace Master Nanwu in an instant. Then Jian Wushuang attacked. The beautiful sword light lit up, so beautiful that it could break one's heart. The sword light was hazy with a hint of intoxication, which made people yearn for it. It was the 7th move of space-time swordsmanship. Intoxication 1 move. The same intoxication 1 move was also used with all one's strength. However, it was completely different when it was used in the ordinary world, and now in the sword principle world. In terms of speed, it was much faster. In terms of power, it was also much stronger. Even the essence contained in the sword was deeper. However, in the face of this sword, Palace Master Nanwu just smiled faintly and casually struck out with one palm. The void shook. Bang! Palace Master Nanwu's palm, which was filled with black thunderbolt power, directly struck the body of the Blood Mountain sword. The Blood Mountain sword slightly changed its direction, and the sword force instantly disintegrated. However, Jian Wushuang did not retreat at all. He waved his wrist. He actually continued to attack. Whoosh! 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 Sword lights swept out one after another. Jian Wushuang displayed his swordsmanship to the fullest with his close combat ability. You want to fight me in close combat? How dare you? Palace Master Nanwu shouted, and then he also attacked. Chapter 2796. Killing Move. Palace Master Nan Wu had risen from endless slaughter many years ago. When he rose, countless experts had died at his hands, and anyone who fought with Palace Master Nan Wu knew that Palace Master Nan Wu was best at close combat. Boom! Palace Head Nan Wu's body suddenly expanded to 3 meters tall, and his body became as sturdy as a bull. On the surface of his sturdy body, there was a layer of black lightning energy, covered by a secret manual. His 2 palms were also covered by black lightning. They were like 2 black thunderclouds. Boom! 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 The 2 black thunderclouds had the power to topple mountains and overturn seas, as they struck out crazily. In an instant, thunder rumbled, and the surrounding void completely fell into a thunder field. However, the thunder field was quickly torn apart by the terrifying sword essence. In the center of the battlefield, Jian Wuxia and Palace Master Nan Wu fought crazily. They exchanged blows again and again. Both of them exerted their close combat abilities to the maximum. Jian Wuxia had also displayed his swordsmanship to the fullest. With the help of the sword principle world, Jian Wuxia's every move was extremely powerful and fast. This kid's overall strength has increased so much in the sword principle world. His swordsmanship is amazing. Palace Master Nan Wu did not dare to be careless, and attacked with all his strength. Even so, he and Jian Wuxia were evenly matched in a short period of time. Bang! 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 A low sound of collision echoed in the sky. In just a few breaths, Jian Wuxia and Palace Master Nan Wu had exchanged hundreds of blows in the void. Each exchange was extremely fierce. If it were an ordinary divine master, the recoil alone would have been unbearable. However, both Jian Wuxia and Palace Master Nan Wu were still in their peak condition. Needless to say, Jian Wuxia had an extremely powerful divine body, and the most perfect immortal body. Ordinary people could not hurt him at all. As for Palace Master Nan Wu, his divine body was also extremely powerful, so he could completely ignore the recoil. During the battle, Palace Master Nan Wu also found that Jian Wuxia was no weaker than him in close combat. I, Nan Wu, rose from the endless slaughter and experienced countless battles and life and death battles to improve my close combat ability to this level. I believe that no one in the Pilsun Holy World can match me in close combat ability, but Jian, he rose so quickly and obviously hasn't cultivated for long, but his close combat ability is also so strong. Palace Master Nan Wu was extremely shocked. What he did not know was that Jian Wuxia had only cultivated for a short period of time, but it was only for this life. In his previous life, he had experienced more killing and life and death tests than he had. In his previous life, he had forged an iron-like temperament and had a lot of experience in close combat. After all, he had the bloodline of the ancient race, and the ancient race's strongest ability was close combat. Therefore, Jian Wuxia's close combat ability had always been very strong, much stronger than that of an ordinary great divine master. He was not weaker than Palace Master Nan Wu at all. However, even though he was now on par with Palace Master Nan Wu with the support of the sword principle world and domain, Jian Wuxia still could not be happy. After all, he had blocked the attack, but his camp was at an absolute disadvantage in the other battlefields, and the disadvantage was still growing. I can't continue like this. I have to find a way to turn the situation around. As for me, the only way to turn the situation around is to defeat, or even kill Palace Master Nan Wu. Jian Wuxia stared at Palace Master Nan Wu with a cold gaze. Defeat or kill Palace Master Nan Wu. If it were anyone else in the Pilsun sacred world, they would not even dare to think about it. But he was different. It's difficult to gain the upper hand with the techniques he has just displayed, let alone defeat or kill him. I have no choice but to use my killer move. Jian Wuxia's face darkened. He had many techniques and many killer moves. But now, although he had shown many techniques and some killer moves, he still had the most terrifying killer moves. Having made up his mind, Jian Wuxia, who had been fighting fiercely with Palace Master Nan Wu, immediately retreated. At the same time, golden divine power surged out from his body. The golden divine power was vast and mighty. In the blink of an eye, It formed a huge golden divine power sea that filled the heaven and earth. Behind Jian Wushuang, the 30,000-meter tall golden emperor's eyes suddenly focused, and a golden light suddenly burst out. Then, the 30,000-meter tall golden emperor waved both of his palms at the same time. The two golden palms spread out in an instant and expanded infinitely, covering the sky and the sun. One palm covered half of the heaven and earth, and the two palms completely covered the surrounding void. The two palms slowly closed toward where Palace Master Nan Wu was. Punishment, divine destruction! Jian Wushuang also shouted. Terrifying divine power burst out from the two giant palms of the Golden Emperor. At the moment when they slowly closed, the void where Palace Master Nan Wu was completely confined. Endless divine power crazily pressed toward Palace Master Nan Wu. The divine destruction that came with the divine law divine realm was a move that relied on a large amount of divine power to annihilate the opponent. This move consumed a lot of divine power, but its power was earth-shaking. With Jian Wushuang's current strength of divine power, it was difficult for an ordinary peak divine master to survive this move. However, the one who was enduring this move was Palace Master Nan Wu, the publicly recognized #1 expert in the Pilsun continent. This move seems to be quite powerful. Sensing the surroundings slowly closing in on him, and the endless divine power pressing toward him, even Palace Master Nan Wu's eyes suddenly focused. Immediately, a large amount of black thunderbolt power swept out from Palace Master Nan Wu's body. In the blink of an eye, the black thunderbolt power covered his entire body. The black thunderbolt power that filled the sky formed a huge ancient strange beast around him. This ancient strange beast had 4 huge heads. After taking shape, these 4 huge heads charged towards the 2 huge palms that were closing in from the surroundings. In the blink of an eye, these 4 huge strange beast heads collided with the 2 huge golden palms. Rumble, the world trembled. The sound of majestic divine power being crazily squeezed together, with the sound of lightning energy, sweeping through the void reverberated throughout the entire battlefield. Chapter 2797. God seals might in the battlefield. The battle was still raging like wildfire. However, when God Extinguisher clashed with the four heads of the black lightning beast condensed on Palace Master Nanwu's body, that terrifying might attracted the gazes of all the experts on the battlefield. What a powerful power! It's one thing for Palace Master Nanwu to be able to display such power, but that Swordsman's technique is actually so tyrannical. What a fellow! With such an intense collision of power, I'm afraid that we advanced great divine paragons would be killed the moment we get close. Even the weaker peak great divine paragons would have no choice but to retreat under such a collision. The experts from both sides were secretly amazed. All of them looked at the place where the two forces collided with horror in their eyes. In the center of the battlefield, under the cover of endless golden divine power, a pitch-black thunderbolt suddenly swept out. It was like a black saber cutting through the golden divine power ocean. Then black thunderbolts surged wildly in the sky. Jian Wushuang's full-strength divine destruction move was actually blocked by Palace Master Nanwu. Judging from Palace Master Nanwu's current posture, she was only a little embarrassed, but her aura was not weak at all. Sword 1, is this your strongest move? Palace Master Nanwu looked at Jian Wushuang with lightning-like eyes. Strongest move? No, it's not. Jian Wushuang shook his head lightly. That move just now is far from enough. Palace Master Nanwu's expression changed. In the next moment, as if he had sensed something, he immediately raised his head. When he raised his head, his pupils suddenly shrank. He saw that in the sky above him, in the scroll world that had always existed in the sky, a surge of supreme power had slowly descended. A huge handprint slowly descended from the scroll world. The mountain and river map was the 9-region seal, and the 1,000 treasures great world. He had perfectly displayed the power of the 1,000 treasures great world. With the help of the sword principal world of the 1,000 treasures great world, his swordsmanship was so powerful that he was able to fight Palace Master Nanwu. What Jian Wushuang was displaying now was the power of the other secret skill, the 9-region seal. The 9-region seal was the true power of the 9-region seal. The hand seal that was slowly descending from the scroll world was the divine emperor seal that Jian Wushuang had mastered by combining the first 3 moves of the 9-region seal. This move, Palace Master Nanwu's expression changed slightly. He was under the giant hand seal, so he could clearly sense the destructive power contained in it. The power was much more powerful than the 2 giant golden palms that Jian Wushuang had slowly closed in on him and severely injured him. It was really much more powerful. He could easily resist the 2 golden palms that had slowly closed in on him. But now, the giant handprint that fell from the sky made him feel a little apprehensive. However, it was merely palpitating. Palace Master Nanwu had dominated the Pil Sun sacred world for so many years. He had always been known as the #1 expert of the Pil Sun sacred world. His true strength was not as simple as that. After the enormous hand seal slowly descended, Palace Master Nanwu's expression suddenly sank. After which, a black lightning seal suddenly appeared between his brows. The moment this black lightning seal appeared, swoosh! A large amount of black lightning energy crazily swept out from the mark. This black lightning energy was stronger and darker than Palace Master Nanwu's god body. Then, this black lightning energy formed a second layer of black lightning armor on his body. Thunder Beast Kirin, Palace Master Nanwu shouted, and the black lightning energy in the sky swept up again. A huge ancient strange beast condensed around his body. This ancient strange beast was one of the top bloodlines of the absolute beginning divine realm, the Kirin strange beast. At this moment this Kirin strange beast, which was completely formed by the black lightning energy, threw its head back and roared furiously, as if it was venting its unwillingness. In the next moment, the Kirin beast dashed out and fiercely collided with the huge palm print that descended from the void above. Boom! Boom! The world shook. The violent power formed a turbulent wave that swept out in all directions. The experts fighting on the surrounding battlefield were already quite far away from the place where Jian Wushuang and Palace Master Nanwu were fighting. Logically, it should have been difficult for the battle between the two to spread to other battlefields. However, As the Kirin beast collided with the giant palm, the terrifying power swept in all directions. The battlefields that were closer to them were all swept away. These powerful great divine masters. They were so weak under the power that they were blown to all directions. It took them a long time to stabilize themselves. In the center of the battlefield, pa! With a crisp sound, a crack appeared in the center of the Kirin-type exotic beast that was completely condensed from the black lightning energy. Then, the entire body of the exotic beast collapsed, and the black lightning energy that filled the sky also dissipated into thin air. Palace head Nan Wu's expression sank, and a mouthful of blood flowed out from the corner of her mouth. Her body also trembled slightly. However, the giant palm that had descended from the sky had completely dissipated. Injured? You actually injured me? Palace Master Nan Wu felt that her divine body had suffered some damage, and endless fury immediately surged in her eyes. A surge of shocking anger rushed to the sky and earth. Don't worry, there's more. Jian Wuxuang smiled coldly. What? Palace Master Nan Wu's expression changed, and he raised his head again. As expected, a strong power slowly spread out from the lifelike scroll world above. Rumble, this power was obviously stronger than when Jian Wuxuang had used the Divine Emperor seal. Then a huge palm appeared. It was much bigger and more powerful than before. Most importantly, when this huge palm descended from the scroll world, a huge figure appeared in the scroll world in the sky. It was an emperor wearing a royal robe and a crown. He was extremely tall, more than 1 million feet tall, and more than 10 million feet tall. His figure was blurry, and his appearance couldn't be seen. However, the aura he carried seemed to attract people's attention. It was the aura of a true emperor. Only the emperors of heaven and earth, the rulers of the world, had the aura of a true emperor. And that huge palm was the display of this emperor's figure. It was the strongest two of the 3 seals of the 9 regions: seal of the mountain and river map. The true emperor seal. Chapter 2798. So that was the end? There were 3 strongest seals in the 9-region seal, namely the Divine Emperor Seal, the True Emperor Seal, and the Supreme Seal. All 3 seals needed to combine the 3 handprints of the 9-region seal. Jian Wushuang had known about the existence of these 3 seals when he first obtained the mountain and river map. After studying them carefully, he had combined the first 3 moves of the 9-region seal and mastered the Divine Emperor Seal. Over the years, as his strength continued to increase, his study of the 9-region seal naturally deepened. Not long ago, he had already combined the 3 moves of the 9-region seal and mastered the True Emperor Seal. Now he had fully displayed the True Emperor Seal. In terms of power, the True Emperor Seal was much stronger than the Divine Emperor Seal he had just displayed. Rumble, the huge hand seal descended once again. That earth-shattering power suppressed everything below. Palace Master Nan Wu stood at the bottom of the hand seal, but his expression was extremely ugly. There's still more. Palace Master Nan Wu's heart trembled. Although he had used all his strength to block that hand seal, it had still injured him quite a bit. However, the power of this hand seal was clearly much stronger than the previous one. Even he felt an immense pressure under this hand seal. Humph! With a cold snort, the black lightning seal between Palace Master Nan Wu's brows once again flashed explosively. Vast and mighty black lightning strength once again spread out wildly. As the surging black lightning strength surged out, the black lightning seal between Palace Master Nan Wu's brows gradually dimmed. Finally, it completely disappeared. His eyes were bloodshot, and his face was filled with madness. Come on! With a roar, the huge Kylan beast rose up again from the surface of Palace Master Nan Wu's body. In terms of size, this Kylan beast was even larger and more powerful than the previous one. Judging from Palace Master Nan Wu's flushed face, he had used all his means and trump cards in this move. This was also his strongest move. Die! Jian Wushuang's killing intent was like a rainbow. The huge palm in the void came crushing down again, and in the blink of an eye, it collided with the Kirin beast again. Boom! This time, the terrifying boom had completely turned into a sonic boom, which resounded in the ears of all the experts on both sides. The many great divine masters who were fighting on the battlefield were affected by the impact, and could not help but stop what they were doing. Numerous gazes filled with shock and astonishment looked towards the center of the battlefield. Isn't this a little too strong? The Dongfang clan head couldn't help but mutter. She was a genuine peak great divine venerate, but at this moment the power that instantly erupted from the center of the battlefield caused his heart to tremble, causing her to tremble from the bottom of her heart. She even felt that if she was in the center of this power, she would probably be crushed into pieces by the violent power. In other words, the power in the center of the battlefield could easily kill ordinary peak great divine masters. Such a terrifying collision. Who will win and who will lose between these two? Many great divine masters muttered in their hearts. Before the start of the battle, they would have thought that Palace Master Nan Wu would win. After all, Palace Master Nan Wu was so famous that her strength had been recognized for many years. Jian Wushuang's rise was too short. Even if he had the battle strength of a peak great divine master, no one would really think that he could challenge Palace Master Nan Wu. But now that Jian Wushuang was fighting with Palace Master Nan Wu, no one dared to think that way anymore. The skills that Jian Wushuang displayed in this battle shocked everyone. In particular, the killing moves that he was using now were too terrifying. Boom! Boom! The sound of the explosions gradually faded, and the divine power that filled the sky gradually dissipated. Finally, the scene at the center of the battlefield appeared before everyone's eyes. In the center of the battlefield, in the air, Palace Head Nan Wu was still standing there. However, at this moment, the clothes on his body were in tatters, and there were even some cracks on the armor on his body. His armor and clothes were covered in blood. His face was deathly pale, and blood flowed out from both sides of his mouth. His hair was also extremely messy, especially his aura, which was obviously much weaker than when he was at his peak. Seriously injured. Palace Master Nan Wu is seriously injured. Many great divine masters from both sides were shocked to see this scene. Before the battle, They had never expected that Palace Master Nan Wu, who had always been known as invincible in the Pil Sun sacred world, would be seriously injured by Jian Wushuang in a head-on fight. Haha! A deranged laughter suddenly sounded. It was the heavily injured Palace Master Nan Wu who was laughing. Although he was seriously injured, his eyes were shining brightly and his face was full of madness. How many years has it been? How long has it been since I became invincible in the Pil Sun sacred world? Sword 1. Sword 1. You're the first person to force me to such an extent ever since I became invincible in the sacred Pil Sun world. I Nan Wu have to admire you. The technique you used just now was indeed extremely powerful. Unfortunately, it ends here. Palace Master Nan Wu's voice reverberated through the vast world. The great divine masters from both sides also sighed inwardly. They had to admit that Palace Master Nan Wu was the strongest person in the Pil Sun sacred world since the death of Sage Redstone. He had been invincible in the Pil Sun sacred world for many years and had experienced many battles along the way. However, very few people were able to injure him. There were even fewer who were able to seriously injure him and force him to such an extent. Jian Wushuang was the first. In the eyes of the surrounding experts, Jian Wushuang deserved to be proud even if he died. Is this the end? Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes slightly. There was a trace of unwillingness in his heart, but his gaze became a little misty. In the sword tomb below, divine swords were emitting unique and extremely powerful sword essence, which filled every corner of the sword principal world. Jian Wushuang's expression was cold, but his consciousness and soul power had already completely covered the entire sword principal world. At this moment, his body and mind had become one with the entire sword principal world, and even with every divine sword and sword essence in the sword principal world. Jian Wushuang immediately entered an extremely wonderful state. Sword 1, surrender your life. Palace Master Nan Wu's killing intent soared, and the black thunderbolts on his body also soared. However, he once again crazily attacked Jian Wushuang. Chapter 2799. The 1,000 square-shaped ray. Although Palace Master Nan Wu was seriously injured and her strength was greatly reduced, her battle strength was still at the peak of the great divine master level, and her methods were extremely formidable. Under the cover of a large amount of black thunderbolt power, a huge thunderbolt beast appeared once again. This thunderbolt beast covered Palace Master Nan Wu's entire body. It roared and appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. Its bloody mouth had already opened. It was ready to swallow Jian Wushuang's entire body. But at this moment, Jian Wushuang, who had narrowed his eyes, suddenly opened them. A fierce light flashed in his eyes. Then Jian Wushuang attacked. He just attacked casually, looking like an ordinary person swinging a wooden sword. But when he swung his long sword, a sword light immediately lit up. This sword light was extremely weak, extremely dim, and incomplete. It was a broken light, a remnant light. However, when this remnant light appeared, in the blink of an eye, there were at least hundreds and thousands of scattered lights in the world. Under the gaze of Palace Master Nan Wu, the original Jian Wushuang suddenly became hundreds and thousands of people. Palace Master Nan Wu was shocked. The black thunder beast covering his body suddenly swallowed, but it had already lost its target. The swallowing did not even touch Jian Wushuang's clothes. Chi! The sound of the sword tip entering his body suddenly sounded. Palace Master Nan Wu felt a sharp pain in his waist, and then his eyes widened. This is... Palace Master Nan Wu turned his head with great difficulty and saw Jian Wushuang, who was still holding a longsword, standing behind him. Blood was flowing slowly on the body of Jian Wushuang's longsword. Ultimate skill. Palace Master Nan Wu murmured a few words, but his body had been divided into two parts, starting from his waist. In that moment, Jian Wushuang's blood mountain sword had cut through his body armor, which was already damaged. Palace Master Nan Wu's eyes dimmed, and his consciousness completely disappeared. In the blink of an eye, he was dead. Silence. In such a huge battlefield, if the experts from both sides were fighting crazily, it would be shocking and noisy. However, at this moment, the entire battlefield was completely silent, and everyone subconsciously stopped what they were doing. One by one, they looked in the direction of the center with shock and disbelief. In their sight, Jian Wushuang stood there calmly with a sword in one hand, and there was a cold corpse that had been cut into two pieces under his feet. That corpse was actually Palace Master Nan Wu's. Dead. Palace Master Nan Wu is dead? How is it possible? Impossible. This, an unprecedented clamor exploded in the void. The great divine masters from both sides were all shocked by the scene. It was Palace Master Nan Wu, the publicly acknowledged #1 expert of the Pil Sun sacred world. Before the battle began, none of them thought that Jian Wushuang could fight Palace Master Nan Wu head-on. Even if they could stop her, it was unlikely. But now, the result was right in front of them. Not only did Jian Wushuang completely stop Palace Master Nan Wu, but he also fought her head-on. They were evenly matched, and he used all kinds of killer moves to force Palace Master Nan Wu into a miserable state. Now Jian Wushuang killed Palace Master Nan Wu out of everyone's expectations? How did he do it? Everyone was a little confused. Jian Wushuang, who was standing quietly beside Palace Master Nan Wu's corpse, had a strange smile on his face. The 8th move of space-time swordsmanship. I've been trapped for so long, and I've been studying it carefully for so long, but I've never been able to create it. I didn't expect to fight with Palace Master Nan Wu head-on today. With the support of the Sword Principal World, I used all my strength to fight with Palace Master Nan Wu. I found a special state, and finally created the 8th move. Sure enough, only real combat is the fastest way to improve my strength. Jian Wushuang was also very happy. He had been stuck in the 7th move of the space-time swordsmanship for a long time. Before he came to the Danyang continent, he had already created the 7th move. However, after such a long time, he still could not create the 8th move. This move had been stuck for too long, but he had already begun to study and ponder it. He just could not really create it. However, today's battle had given him a rare opportunity, and he had perfectly grasped this opportunity. This sword move of mine seems to have thousands of rays of remnant light. Therefore, Its name should be Thousand Rays of Remnant Light, Jian Wushuang muttered. From then on, the eighth move of the space-time sword art, Thousand Rays of Remnant Light, created by Jian Wushuang, was finally completed. Once the sword art was completed, he used it to kill Palace Master Nan Wu, who was seriously injured. It could only be blamed on Palace Master Nan Wu's bad luck to encounter Jian Wushuang, who was extremely talented in sword principle. If it were anyone else, even in the same situation, they would not be able to seize this opportunity to create a new unique move. After the unique move was completed, Palace Master Nan Wu was also killed. Jian Wushuang was overjoyed, but he knew the current situation. He quickly suppressed his joy and slowly looked at the other battlefields around him. His face darkened. Although he had won the battle, the other battlefields, except for Yin Suer, were all at a disadvantage. It had been a long time since the battle began. Most of the great divine masters Yin Suer had brought with her had used up their divine power. The others were almost exhausted and could not hold on much longer. The Sword Union was also at an absolute disadvantage. In this battle, both Dark Eagle and the junior Great Divine Master who had joined the Sword Union had died. More Great Divine Masters under Yin Suer had died. On the other hand, not many Great Divine Masters from the alliance of the four forces had died so far. Fortunately, Jian Wushuang had dealt with Palace Master Nan Wu in time, so there was still room for improvement. If he had delayed any longer, Yin Suer, the experts from the Cloud Mountain sect, and the Sword Union would have died in less than 15 minutes. Except for the few peak divine masters, all of them were probably dead. Watch me. Seeing the situation around him, Jian Wushuang's eyes suddenly turned cold. Boom! A majestic divine power suddenly erupted from Jian Wushuang's body, like a volcano that had been silent for hundreds of millions of years. Chapter 2800, Ultimate Technique. The surging pure divine power formed a huge divine power sea in the blink of an eye. This divine power sea was boundless and contained too much divine power. It was completely beyond the imagination of all the great divine venerables present. How can there be such a huge divine power? Divine power sea, such a huge divine power sea? This divine power sea is emitted from Jianyi's body? Such a huge amount of divine power. Even a top-notch immortal saint is only SOSO, right? A series of shocked voices sounded. The great divine paragons that were fighting on both sides were all staring at this burst of divine power sea with incomparable shock. And this vast god power sea swept out without restraint, engulfing the entire battlefield. Immediately after, the vast god power condensed into many large hands, crazily grabbing towards the experts of the allied forces. Damn it! What is he trying to do? The god power sea covers the entire battlefield. Could it be that he wants to fight against all of us by himself? The experts of the allied forces were stunned. They found that the divine power sea had completely isolated the entire battlefield and separated their opponents. Then, the giant hand formed by the divine power sea came to grab them. It was obvious that he was trying to fight against the entire allied forces. He's courting death. He doesn't know how to live. The experts of the allied forces were shocked and furious. They admitted that Jian Wushuang's divine power sea was vast. However, once it was formed and rushed toward them, it consumed a lot of divine power. They thought that Jian Wushuang would not be able to hold on for long. At most, his divine power would be exhausted in a moment. However, they did not expect that Jian Wushuang's divine power was so vast that it was ridiculous. Under the crazy impact of the divine power sea, it covered the entire battlefield and swept all the experts of the four forces. In the center of the divine power sea, Jian Wushuang directly attacked. Whoosh! He appeared directly in front of Ba Xiong, as if he had teleported. Ba Xiong was also very powerful. He had always had the upper hand in the fierce battle with his companions. When he saw Jian Wushuang's arrival, his pupils suddenly shrank. He did not dare to be careless with Jian Wushuang, because they had killed Palace Master Nanwu in front of Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang drew his sword. He drew his sword casually, looking like an ordinary person slashing a wooden sword. However, when he drew his long sword, an extremely weak, extremely dim, and obviously incomplete light immediately lit up. It was a streak of residual light. However, when this streak of residual light appeared, in the blink of an eye, there were at least hundreds and thousands of streaks of residual light everywhere. In Ba Xiong's eyes, there was only one Jian Wushuang in front of him, but now there were hundreds and thousands of them. It was the 8th move of the space-time sword art, thousand-sided residual light. It was the same sword move that killed Palace Master Nanwu's sword move. Under the influence of the sword principle world, Jian Wushuang's sword principle and swordsmanship had been greatly improved, and this sword move had become even more mysterious. Ba Xiong subconsciously wanted to block the remnant light when he saw it, but suddenly, a trace of shock flashed in his eyes. The remnant light had already passed through his neck. Too fast. Ba Xiong's eyes were wide open, and his face was filled with unprecedented fear. However, his voice began to fade away. In the surrounding void, the great divine masters from both sides who saw this scene turned pale with fright. One sword killed a peak great divine master. How could Sword 1 be so powerful? The great divine masters were all trembling in their hearts. Previously, Jian Wushuang had used this move to kill Palace Master Nanwu. However, because Jian Wushuang had used several killing moves in succession, Palace Master Nanwu had been severely injured and died under this move. They did not know how powerful this move was. But now, with Jian Wushuang killing Ba Xiong with one move, no one dared to ignore his swordsmanship. The move he just made. Yin Suer stared at Jian Wushuang with a serious expression. The ultimate skill. It's definitely the ultimate skill. The ultimate skill. He created the ultimate skill. The Life and Death Tower Master screamed. The experts who knew what the ultimate skill represented were also shocked. When one's strength reached the Divine Lord level, most of them would start to create their own ultimate skills and ultimate moves. For example, the Kirin Strange Beast that Palace Master Nanwu had used before, which was completely formed from black lightning, was extremely powerful. And ultimate skills also had different levels of strength. The ultimate skill referred to the ultimate skill at the Divine Lord level. To be called the ultimate, it was naturally the strongest and most tyrannical absolute arts. Absolute arts at this level were extremely powerful and terrifying, but it was also very difficult to create them. Palace Master Nanwu had been invincible in the sacred Pill Sun world for so many years, but she still hadn't created an ultimate absolute art. This could be seen from this. In the absolute beginning divine realm, anyone who could create an ultimate absolute art was the most terrifying existence among the divine venerates. Although this existence couldn't compare to the undying sage, it was already completely above the great divine venerate. They even had a unique title, which was Invincible Divine Venerables. Invincible Divine Venerables were the invincible existences among the divine venerables. Each of them easily massacred a large group of great divine venerables, or even peak great divine venerables. They were absolutely the most terrifying existences among the divine venerables. However, there were too few such invincible divine venerables. Under normal circumstances, there might not even be one in a sacred world, like the Pill Sun sacred world. And even in the entire 9 realms of the Golden Crow, there were only a handful of invincible divine masters. But now Jian Wushuang had created the ultimate skill. This meant that not only did Jian Wushuang have this terrifying ultimate skill, but his comprehension of sword principle and rule had reached the highest level that a divine master could reach. He was infinitely close to the immortal saint. If there was only one gap between him and the invincible divine master, it was the gap in divine power. After all, his divine power was only at the peak of the great divine master level. Even so, he could still easily kill a great divine master at the peak. Die! Jian Wushuang moved through the battlefield like a ghost. The blood mountain sword in his hand was like the scythe of the god of death, casually brandishing it. Each of his strikes seemed to be casual. However, each of his strikes was extremely fast, so fast that the great divine masters could not even catch the sword shadow. Chi! 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 The sword light easily passed through the divine bodies or necks of the experts. Even with the protection of the body-protecting armor, the strangling power contained in it could not be resisted. Chapter 2801. Turning the Tide. Heads were sent flying like wheat. In a flash, Jian Wushuang had killed nearly 10 great divine masters from the four forces. Whoosh! Jian Wushuang dashed out again. Run, run! Run! The remaining great divine masters from the four forces were scared out of their wits. When they saw Jian Wushuang charging out again, they did not hesitate and began to run frantically. Everyone was running, including the Life and Death Tower Master, the Dongfang Family Master, and the East God, the three-peak great divine masters. They knew very well that Jian Wushuang could kill Ba Xiong with one strike, and he could also kill them with one strike. If they did not flee now, they would all die. Whoosh! 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 A large number of people were frantically fleeing in all directions. Despite the suppression of the realm and the restriction of the divine power sea, Jian Wushuang was able to catch up with very few of them. However, his eyes had long been fixed on one person. It was the East God. The divine demon sect has suffered heavy losses because of our sword league. The East God hates me to the bone. We can't let this potential threat escape. Jian Wushuang sneered. With a thought, the realm that had covered the entire battlefield rumbled. It was supposed to oppress all the experts of the four forces. But in this battle, the great domain was oppressing the East God alone. What? Under the pressure of the great domain, the already heavily injured East God was once again suppressed. His strength was greatly reduced, and his speed was greatly reduced. Jian Wushuang only made a simple charge forward, and he was already beside the East God. Then a sword light flashed. No! The East God let out a hysterical roar, but the roar gradually disappeared. His eyes dimmed, and his body began to fall down weakly. After killing the East God, Jian Wushuang did not chase after the other experts who had fled. Instead, he let them escape the battlefield. In just a moment, all the experts who had survived the four forces had fled. Is it over? Jian Wushuang looked at the battlefield that had completely calmed down and let out a sigh of relief. Then, the divine power sea that had filled the battlefield, as well as the techniques of the four realms, were slowly withdrawn. The 30,000-meter tall golden emperor behind him also slowly disappeared. The mountain river map was also withdrawn and turned into a golden light that entered his divine body again. All means had stopped. At this moment, Jian Wushuang was feeling the divine power in his body. I've used up 50% of my divine power? Even Jian Wushuang was shocked when he saw that there was only 50% of his divine power left. One had to know that his divine power was extremely vast. Although it could not be said to be endless, the amount was indeed enough to scare people to death. In an ordinary fierce battle, even if he had to fight for a long time, his divine power would be very limited. Under normal circumstances, it would be very rare for him to use more than 10% of his divine power. But in this battle, he had used up 50% of his battle strength and half of it. Jian Wushuang could not help but exclaim that he had really put in a lot of effort in this battle. The many secret skills that he had used, whether it was the 7-star secret skill, the divine punishment skill, or the 9 luminary star armor, all required a tremendous amount of divine power. He had used a lot of divine power just to use these 3 secret skills. He had been trying his best to maintain the 4 realms since the beginning of the battle. Each of the 4 realms consumed a lot of divine power. However, he had been using them from the beginning of the battle until the end. After all, an extremely long time had passed. As for the mountain and river map, it was extremely difficult to use a supreme treasure like it. An ordinary peak divine master could only use the sword principal world of the 1,000 treasures great world for a short period of time. His divine power might not be able to withstand it, but Jian Wushuang had been using it for a very long time. Moreover, he used the divine emperor seal and the true emperor seal of the 9 region seal. Such a method consumed a huge amount of divine power. However, although these secret skills consumed a huge amount of divine power, it was still acceptable for Jian Wushuang's massive divine power. What really consumed him was the final burst of divine power C. The burst of divine power was to isolate the battlefield between the 2 sides and prevent further damage to the experts of the Redstone Castle and the Sword League. Although this move did not last long, it consumed a lot of divine power when the massive divine power kept surging. Only Jian Wushuang dared to play like this. If it were anyone else, even the top immortal saint would not be able to do this. During the time when the divine power sea erupted, he had used up 30% of his divine power, and the other 20% was consumed by his various secret skills. In total, he had only used up 50% of his divine power. Ever since I broke through to the divine devil realm and became a perfect chaotic creature, it's the first time I've used up so much divine power, Jian Wushuang muttered. A perfect chaotic creature has the most perfect immortal body, which requires divine power to recover. For other cultivators, the soul is the root, but for me divine power is the most important thing. As long as I don't use up my divine power, no one can kill me. This time, I've used up too much divine power. I'll take it easy in the future. Unless it's really a life or death situation, I can only use 30% of my divine power. The remaining 70% will be used to save my life, Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. While he was pondering, many experts from the Redstone Castle and the Sword League had surrounded him. These experts were shocked and could not calm down for a long time. They looked at Jian Wushuang with respect and admiration. Their camp was at an absolute disadvantage in this battle. It could even be said that there was no room for them to fight back. At the beginning of the battle, almost everyone thought that their camp would lose this battle. It was just a question of whether they would lose too miserably. But who would have thought that this Sword Union chief, Jian Yi, who was merely emitting the aura of a senior great deity, would use lightning-fast methods to first defeat and heavily injure East God. Then, he would fight against Palace Master Nanwu alone. After a fierce battle, he killed Palace Master Nanwu directly. In the end, he single-handedly fought against all the experts from the 4 forces camps. And in the end, he swept through all the experts from the 4 forces camps, killing them until the 4 forces camps could only flee frantically. In this battle, he had killed 3 peak great deities one after another, including Palace Master Nanwu, who was the strongest. It could be said that he had single-handedly turned the tables on the situation that he was bound to lose. Chapter 2802. The dust has settled, Jianni. Yin Suer stared at Jian Wushuang with a complicated look. Why? Don't you recognize me? Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. No, I just didn't expect you to be so strong. Yin Suer exclaimed in surprise. The surrounding experts nodded in unison. Indeed, Jian Wushuang's combat strength was too strong. He had killed Palace Master Nan Wu and swept through all the experts of the allied forces. This strength was not something an ordinary great divine master could have. Only the legendary invincible divine master could have such a skill. As for Jian Wushuang, even if he was not as strong as the real invincible divine master, he was very close. But don't forget, the divine power aura emitted by Jian Wushuang was only that of a senior great divine master? A senior great divine master had almost the combat strength of an invincible divine master? His secret skills are very impressive. At the same time, he also has countless trump cards. Yin Suer praised in her heart. In this battle, Jian Wushuang had gone all out. He had indeed revealed too many tricks and trump cards. All kinds of tricks and trump cards were emerging one after another, which amazed many experts present. Many experts present were now curious about what kind of experience Jian Wushuang had had, or what kind of amazing opportunities he had obtained. They all knew that Jian Wushuang could not have had so many tricks and trump cards without a great opportunity. His combat strength would never have been so strong. Jian Wushuang smiled bitterly in his heart when he noticed the strange gazes around him. After a long while, Jian Wushuang exhaled and said, "In any case, today's battle is finally over." Yes, it's over. The experts around them also heaved a sigh of relief, especially the remaining great divine masters of Yin Suer's camp, who were still smiling in surprise. We've won. We've won this battle. Not only have we won the internal battle within Crimson Rock Castle, we've also defeated the allied forces of the four great powers. Although Crimson Rock Castle has suffered heavy losses in this battle, and many great divine paragons have fallen, It won't be long before we can reorganize and regroup. After today's battle, our Crimson Rock Castle will definitely regain its prestige from many years ago. The Nangong Wugong, the Tower of Life and Death, the Divine Devil Sect, and the Dongfang family will once again submit to our Crimson Rock Castle. This is too good. Voices filled with pleasant surprise reverberated in the air. Beside them, Yun Shan and his 2 remaining High Divine Paragons had extremely complicated expressions on their faces. It was indeed gratifying that the alliance of the 4 great powers had been defeated. However, the faction they belonged to had similarly been defeated by Yin Suer. Yun Shan. Yin Suer's voice rang out. She gave Yun Shan a deep look. After a long while, she continued. The reason why I suddenly attacked you before was because I sensed that Great Divine God Tianmu had close contact with the Nangong Wugong. Great Divine God Tianmu was your subordinate, and also your confidant. I subconsciously thought that you had fallen, and wanted to collude with the Nangong Wugong to harm the Red Stone Castle. I didn't expect that Great Divine God Tianmu had schemed against you. This time I have misunderstood you. I apologize. Yin Suer's voice was extremely sincere. For so many years, she and Yun Shan had been fighting in the open and in the dark, and they were extremely fierce. But no matter how much they fought, Yin Suer recognized Yun Shan's strength and ability. In addition, Yun Shan had founded Crimson Rock Castle with Redstone Saint, and they had fought together to conquer the world. Crimson Rock Saint had 50% of the credit for Crimson Rock Fort's complete control of a realm, while Yun Shan had at least 30%. Yin Suer had never denied Yun Shan's achievements. Therefore, she still had a trace of respect for Yun Shan from the bottom of her heart. Previously, if she hadn't been schemed by Great Divine God Tianmu, and thought that Yun Shan had colluded with the South Wugong, she would never have directly launched a great war against Yun Shan in this manner. And just now, after being ambushed by her camp and being heavily injured, Yun Shan was still able to put the overall situation first, and take the initiative to join hands with her to fight against the allied forces of the 4 major forces. This made Yin Suer extremely gratified and moved. So now that the Great War had ended, Yin Suer also took the initiative to apologize to Yun Shan. This old man does not know people well. Being schemed against by others is also this old man's own fault. Yun Shan said, the winner takes all. This battle this old man has lost. From today onwards, the Crimson Rock Castle will absolutely respect you, Lord Castle Lord. If Lord Castle Lord has any demolition in the future, I, Yun Shan, will not say a word of no. Yun Shan's voice was equally sincere. Previously, the reason why he was unconvinced of Yin Suer and fought with her was because he doubted her methods. He believed that Yin Suer lacked experience and wisdom, so she was not suitable to control this huge red stone castle. However, after all these years of competition, Yun Shan had witnessed Yin Suer's growth and her methods. Especially in this battle, he was completely convinced. The strength that Yin Suer had accumulated in a short period of time, and the fact that she had secretly recruited several other small factions, as well as bribed the experts from the White Cloud Mansion, the Demon Ceiling Hall, and the Eclipse Gate, these 3 first-rate forces as backup plans, especially what shocked him was the relationship between Yin Suer and the Sword Union. He had never expected that the Sword Union and Yin Suer would actually have a cooperative relationship from the very beginning. Both sides had long reached an agreement, and in this battle, all sorts of changes were made. Yin Suer's methods had completely exceeded his expectations. He was also completely convinced by Yin Suer, not only in terms of strength, but also in terms of intelligence and tactics. He no longer had any doubts. Naturally, he was now willing to serve Yin Suer as his master. And Yun Shan's change in attitude made Yin Suer immediately overjoyed. Uncle Yun Shan, from today onwards, you will still be the Grand Elder of our Crimson Rock Castle. In Crimson Rock Castle, other than me, you will be the most respected, Yin Suer said hurriedly. Hee, it's rare for Suer to still be willing to call me uncle. Yun Shan also revealed a trace of a smile. When the surrounding people saw this, they all heaved a sigh of relief. It was very obvious that Yin Suer and Yun Shan had completely reconciled. The past struggles, even the great battle this time, had already become the clouds of the past. And this was the best ending for Crimson Rock Castle. Well, although we won this battle, it was a Pyrrhic victory. Not only did many great divine masters die, but even those who survived were injured and consumed too much of each other's divine power. We should go back and recover our injuries and divine power. After we recover, we will think of ways to deal with those top forces, Jian Wushuang said with a smile. Yes, restore good condition first, then go to those few families to settle accounts properly. Yin Suer's voice was ice cold. Chapter 2803. Aftermath of battle. After the battle was over, Yin Suer, Yin Shan, and the others returned to Crimson Rock Castle, while Jian Wushuang returned to the Sword Union with the experts of the Sword Union. After they returned, the experts began to recover their injuries and divine power. At the same time, the result of the earth-shaking battle, which affected the entire situation of the Pilsun Sacred World, spread throughout the entire Pilsun continent. They won. Yin Suer's camp actually won? First, they defeated the Yunshan camp, then the Blood Thunder King camp, and finally, they clashed with the allied forces of the four major forces. They defeated the allied forces of the four major forces head-on, and even Palace Master Nanwu died. Palace Master Nanwu died? How is this possible? Could it be that the Undying Sage personally took action? After hearing this news, the entire Pilsun continent was in a state of shock. Palace Master Nanwu had been invincible on the Pilsun continent for too long. The cultivators on the Pilsun continent couldn't believe that Palace Master Nanwu would actually die. If he really was going to die, most people thought that the Undying Sage personally took action. However, news quickly spread that the one who killed Palace Master Nanwu wasn't the Undying Sage, but a senior Great Divine Venerable. This senior Great Divine Master was Su Han, the Master of the Sword League. Su Han also had another name, Sword One. Sword One was a name that many people on the Pilsun continent were familiar with. When the Divine Demon Sect and the Tower of Life and Death had wanted to kill Jian Wushuang, they had placed a bounty on Jian Wushuang in the entire Pilsun Sacred World and offered a sky-high price. At that time, Jianyi was said to be only an earth god master. However, in less than 100 years, Jianyi had established a huge sword league with Su Han's identity. Now Jianyi had killed Palace Master Nanwu directly. The news was very clear. Jianyi had killed Palace Master Nanwu in a fair one-on-one battle. He had even killed the East God and Ba Xiong, who had reached the level of a peak great god master. He had killed 3 peak great divine paragons in one go. This battle record shocked everyone. And since Palace Head Nanwu had been killed by Sword 1, it was only natural that Sword 1 would replace Palace Head Nanwu and become the new strongest on the Pil Sun continent. And because of this, the experts on the Pil Sun continent were even more shocked. A high-level great divine paragon actually became the strongest expert on the Pil Sun continent. Alliance Master Su Han, no, it's Jianyi. He's really amazing. Genius. Alliance Master Su Han is definitely a real genius. I'm afraid there has never been such a genius in the Pil Sun sacred world since the creation of Crimson Rock Saint. Countless people were amazed. They were amazed by Jian Wushuang's strength and talent. Of course, many people were also talking about the battle. Good man. With the help of the Sword Union, Yin Suer has gathered the Cloud Mountain sect and defeated the Blood Thunder King sect. Even the Blood Thunder King died, and the Red Stone Castle fell into his hands. The 4 alliances formed by Palace Master Nanwu, the Tower of Life and Death, the Divine Demon sect, and the Dongfang family were also defeated. From today onwards, no one in the Pil Sun continent and the entire Pil Sun holy world can stop the Red Stone Castle. If nothing goes wrong, Crimson Rock Castle will probably regain its former dominance and control over the sacred Pil Sun world. Yeah, that's probably the case. Oh right, I heard that even external forces are participating in this battle. I think it's called the Heavenly Void Temple. I wonder what its background is. Heavenly Void Temple? That's the overlord of the Heavenly Void world. I heard that the Undying Sage is personally overseeing it. All sorts of discussions spread across the Pil Sun continent. However, these discussions ultimately came down to 3 points. First, Crimson Rock Castle would once again regain complete control over the Pil Sun sacred world. Second, the most powerful expert of the Pil Sun continent had changed masters. The name Sword 1 had already resounded throughout every corner of the Pil Sun continent. In terms of fame and prestige, it had completely surpassed that of Palace Master Nanwu. After all, Palace Master Nanwu had already reached the peak of the Great Reverent God realm. The chances of becoming an invincible divine lord were slim. The only possibility was to directly break through and become an undying sage. However, the difficulty was also incomparably difficult. However, Sword 1 was different. Sword 1's battle prowess was already so tyrannical just because he was a high-level Great Divine Lord. Once he broke through and reached the peak of the Great Divine Lord realm in the future, he would definitely become even more terrifying. He would definitely become an invincible Divine Lord. The third point was that the experts from all the factions on the Pil Sun continent knew that if the Red Stone Castle survived this battle, then the 4 top factions that formed the Alliance army would be in trouble. Everyone knew that the Red Stone Castle would definitely settle their scores later. In the Dark Palace, this palace did not have the slightest bit of light, nor did it have any decorations. There was only a huge round table in the middle. This round table was where the leaders of the 4 top forces usually gathered. But now, the leaders of the 4 top forces, Palace Master Nanwu and East God, had been killed. Only the Life and Death Tower Master and the Dongfang family head were still sitting there. There were also 2 figures next to them. But they were a senior great deity from the Nanwu Palace and the Divine Demon sect. At this moment, the 4 of them were gathered here, and all of their faces were extremely gloomy. What should we do? The Dongfang family head was the first to speak, but his voice was abnormally low. However, when they heard these 3 words, the 3 people next to him were all silent. After a long while, the Life and Death Tower Lord spoke again. I've already received news that the people of Crimson Rock Castle and the people of the Sword Union have already returned to their respective lairs. However, when they returned, they didn't just stop there. It was because the losses from the previous Great War were too great, and the divine powers of many experts were almost exhausted. They only returned to temporarily recover their states and replenish their divine powers. Once their states recover to the peak, Yin Suer will definitely make a move against our four families. This is without a doubt. If Yin Suer's family is the only one here, there's nothing to worry about. Crimson Rock Castle just went through a huge battle, and there aren't many experts left. The allied forces of the four powers can definitely fight them head-on, and our chances of winning are still very high. But the key point is, if Yin Suer wants to make a move, she'll definitely call the Sword Alliance, and that's Sword One. Sword One. Upon hearing this name, the Dongfang clan head, and the two senior great divine venerables beside him trembled, unable to calm down for a long time. This name was simply a nightmare to them now. They weren't afraid of Crimson Rock Castle, nor were they afraid of the Sword Alliance, but they were afraid of Sword One. In the previous battle, it was Sword One who had single-handedly turned the tides and completely changed the situation. Although he was only one person, his strength had completely exceeded their imagination. It was no exaggeration to say that Sword One alone was enough to completely slaughter their alliance army. That was because they were too afraid of Sword One. Chapter 2804. Settling Scores in the Autumn. It's the fifth watch today. If Jianyi were to appear personally, the alliance army of the four forces would have no chance of resisting. We would only be slaughtered by him easily. Therefore, we only have two options now. First, we should take advantage of the fact that Yin Suer and the Sword Alliance have yet to make a move and bring their own resources and subordinates to escape from the Pil Sun continent. We might even escape to another sacred world. The Dongfang clan head said in a low voice. Escape from the Pil Sun continent? The Life and Death Tower master's expression changed, but he immediately shook his head. The Life and Death Tower has many trump cards. All of them are on the Pil Sun continent. How can we take them away in such a short time? Not to mention that the Crimson Rock Castle will definitely think of this in advance and take precautions. Even if we don't take any trump cards with us, I'm afraid we won't be able to leave the Pil Sun sacred world so easily. Indeed, under the current situation, it's already very difficult for us to retreat safely. Since that's the case, there's only one way left. We have to compromise. The Dongfang family head said. Compromise? How do we compromise? The Life and Death Tower head looked over. Our four great factions have deep foundations on the Pil Sun continent, and our influence is incomparably great. If the Crimson Rock Castle wants to uproot us, it definitely won't be so easy. Moreover, even if they really have the ability, they probably won't do so. After all, they have to think for the entire Pil Sun sacred world, and the situation of the Pil Sun sacred world in the Golden Crow Nine Realms. Therefore, as long as we are willing to compromise, Yin Suer will most likely not continue attacking us, the Dongfang family head said. We just have to compromise. The senior great deity from the Fiend God sect immediately asked. Of course it's not that simple. The Dongfang family patriarch's face was cold. Right now, the four of us are fish on the chopping block. We are practically at the mercy of Crimson Rock Castle and the Sword Union. In such a situation, if we want to compromise, we have to be prepared to pay a huge price. The price might even be so great that we cannot accept it. But if we want to survive on the Pil Sun continent, we have no choice but to accept it. Although I don't know what the three of you are thinking, I have already made up my mind. Regardless of what conditions Yin Suer will come up with, even if it means reducing the overall strength of our Dongfang family by 70%, as long as we can continue to stay on the Pil Sun continent and gain a foothold, our Dongfang family will be able to accept it, the Dongfang family head said. Hearing these words, the Life and Death Tower Lord and the two senior great divine paragons had extremely solemn expressions on their faces. The Dongfang family was the most ancient family clan in the Pil Sun continent. Their foundations were so deep that other than the Nangong Wugong, the Life and Death Tower, could not compare to the Fiend God sect. But now, the Dongfang family lord had said that he would rather lose 70% of his strength, and was willing to compromise. What sort of great determination was this? I understand. All of you should disperse. It's fine as long as you are mentally prepared. The Life and Death Tower Lord waved his hand. Very quickly, the four figures slowly dispersed. Time flashed by. It had been 3 months since the end of the great battle. During these 3 months, whether it was Crimson Rock Castle or the Sword Alliance, they were all incomparably calm on the surface. However, in the dark, Sewer had already ordered people to keep a close eye on the movements of the four top forces. Once the four top forces made any movements, the Crimson Rock Castle and the Sword Union would immediately take action. Fortunately, the four top forces did not make any big movements during the past 3 months. They also did not want to give up their foundations. Many experts showed no signs of fleeing. After 3 months, the injuries and divine power of the experts of Crimson Rock Castle and the Sword Union had mostly recovered. Even those who were seriously injured had recovered 60 to 70% of their strength. As for full recovery, it was not something that could be completed in just 3 months. Not to mention 3 months, even 3 years or 30 years might not be enough to completely recover. Although they had not fully recovered their strength, it did not affect the next steps of the Crimson Rock Castle and the Sword Union. In the vast void, the experts of the Crimson Rock Castle and the Sword Union gathered together again. 3 months have passed. Now we can go to the four top forces to settle the score. Sewer's expression was cold. Lord. Jian Wuxuang was about to speak. Mr. Jianyi, please stop calling me Lord. I can't afford it. If you don't mind, you can just call me by my name or Sewer. Sewer said, looking extremely humble. In front of her, Jian Wuxuang was indeed just a little guy. His strength was like an ant, so she could not care less about him. At that time, she felt at ease when Jian Wuxuang called her Lord. But now, Jian Wuxuang's strength far exceeded her, and he controlled the huge Sword League. His strength and power were not weaker than hers. The battle 3 months ago was saved by Jian Wuxuang alone. Under such circumstances, how could she dare to put on airs in front of Jian Wuxuang, let alone allow Jian Wuxuang to call her Lord? Castle Lord Sewer. Jian Wuxuang smiled slightly. I must deal with the four top forces, but I don't know how to deal with them. Should I destroy them all or? Sewer's eyes darkened slightly. After thinking for a long time, she said, not all. If possible, it's best if none of them are destroyed. Oh. Jian Wuxuang was surprised. Mr. Jianyi, you've only been wandering in the Pill Sun sacred world, so you don't know much about the outside world. Since my father died, our strength has been greatly reduced. Over the years, our Crimson Rock Castle has been engaged in civil war. This war may look like a great victory for our Crimson Rock Castle, but in fact, we've lost a lot of experts. To put it bluntly, the current situation of the Pill Sun sacred world isn't looking good. In the Golden Crow 9 realms, our Pill Sun sacred world is definitely the weakest. In fact, we are already extremely weak. Under such circumstances, we should save as much as we can from unnecessary battles. For example, the top 4 powers like the Nanwu Palace, the Tower of Life and Death, the Divine Devil Sect, and the Dongfang family. Although they don't belong to our Crimson Rock Castle, they still belong to the Pill Sun sacred world. If we were to wipe out all 4 of these top powers in one go, not only would our Crimson Rock Castle lose a portion of our experts, but our Pill Sun sacred world's battle prowess would also be further weakened. If we are truly weakened to the extreme, then we will be under too much pressure from the outside world. For example, the appearance of the Heavenly Void Temple in this battle is already a sign. The Heavenly Void Temple has openly attacked our Crimson Rock Castle this time. This has never happened before. Sewer frowned tightly, but her heart was incomparably solemn. After that battle, the internal conflict between Crimson Rock Castle and the Pill Sun sacred world could be resolved, but the pressure from the outside world that the Pill Sun sacred world was weak was very frightening. Chapter 2805, Compromise. The first one is here. In other words, do you want the four top forces to submit? Jian Wushuang asked. Not only do you want them to submit, but you also need to make them pay a huge price and teach them a big lesson. You can squeeze their resources and the many territories and industries they control. In addition, we have to restrict their experts. Coincidentally, there are too many experts who have fallen during the war in our Crimson Rock Castle, especially the Crimson Rock Legion. They don't even have a commander at the level of a great divine master. Therefore, every force has to send some great divine masters to serve our Crimson Rock Castle, so that we can allow them to continue living in the Pil Sun sacred world. Yin Suer said coldly. I understand. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly. He already knew what Yin Suer meant. Let's go directly to the four top forces. The divine demon sect should be the weakest now, and the East God has been killed. In terms of battle strength, they are not much stronger than a first-rate force. However, they still have their heritage. How about we trouble Elder Tong of the Sword Union to visit the divine demon sect? Yin Suer said. Sure. Jian Wushuang nodded. As for Elder Tong, he did not have any objections. Palace Master Nanwu's greatest reliance has also fallen. I guess Nanwu Palace is now a pile of loose sand. Uncle Yun Shan, I'll let you take some people to go there in person. Yin Suer said. Yes. Yun Shan nodded slightly. The remaining Life and Death Tower and Dongfang family still have their strongest battle strength, and their overall strength is still well preserved. Therefore, you and I will go to them in person. But which one do you choose, Mr. Jian? Yin Suer looked at Jian Wushuang. Leave the Life and Death Tower to me, Jian Wushuang said. Well, in that case, let's do it. After saying that, Yin Suer and Yun Shan each led a group of experts to the Nangong and Dongfang families. Zhu Xian, follow Elder Tong to the Divine Demon Sect. As for the Life and Death Tower, I will go alone, Jian Wushuang said with a smile. Alone? Elder Tong and Great Divine Master Zhu Xian were stunned, but then they felt relieved. They did not dare to underestimate Jian Wushuang's strength alone. Elder Tong, Great Divine Master Zhu Xian, and the others immediately headed toward the Divine Demon Sect. Jian Wushuang, on the other hand, flew toward the nest of the Tower of Life and Death alone. The Tower of Life and Death, as one of the top forces in the Pil Sun continent, had accumulated an extraordinary foundation over countless years. Its nest was also magnificent and majestic. It was a giant city, which was the lair of the Tower of Life and Death. In the center of the city stood a towering tower that was hundreds of meters tall. The tower was hundreds of stories tall and extremely magnificent. Jian Wushuang appeared outside the giant city and looked down at everything inside the city through the heavy array around the city. Then, a huge surge of divine power swept up and directly covered the giant city in front of him. Rumble, the divine power was so strong that it crushed everything. Even the array around the city seemed to tremble under the pressure of the divine power. The experts of the Life and Death Tower in the city were immediately alarmed. At the top of the towering Tower of Life and Death, the Tower Lord, whose eyes were slightly closed, immediately sensed something and couldn't help but open his eyes. Tower Lord, a senior great deity, walked in anxiously. Are they here? The Tower Lord's voice was low as he asked. Are they from Crimson Rock Castle or the Sword Union? How many are there? There's only one person, the senior great deity said. One person? The Tower Master's expression changed. Although there's only one person, this person he is Sword One. The senior great divine master said with a trace of shock. The Tower Master could not help but be startled, but he also smiled bitterly. Let's go and see Sword One together. The Tower Master sighed, and immediately stood up and rushed out of the city, accompanied by the great divine masters of the Tower of Life and Death. Most of the great divine masters had participated in the previous battle, and had witnessed Jian Wushuang defeating the allied forces of the four forces alone. Now, they followed the tower to the outside of the city. They were all shocked to see Jian Wushuang standing proudly in the void. It was true that Jian Wushuang was the only one standing in front of them. However, this one person had brought them unprecedented pressure. The pressure was so great that even if all the people of the Life and Death Tower worked together, they would not be able to withstand it. He alone could make the entire Tower of Life and Death suffocate. Moreover, they all knew that Jian Wushuang carried several corpse puppets with him. There were even golden-armored corpse puppets. "Greetings, Mr. Jian, the Tower Master said humbly. He stood in front of Jian Wushuang and bowed slightly. "Tower Master, you should know the purpose of my trip, right?" Jian Wushuang stared at the Tower Master coldly. "I know." The Tower Master nodded, but his expression was a little sad. "In a word, submit or die," Jian Wushuang said coldly. "Mr. Jian, the Tower of Life and Death is willing to submit, and will follow the lead of Crimson Rock Castle from now on," the Life and Death Tower Master said directly. He had long been prepared to submit to Crimson Rock Castle. Not only him, but also the great divine masters behind him. "Submission is not something that can be said with words," Jian Wushuang said in a low voice. "I don't know what requests Mr. Jian has, but I can agree to anything that the Life and Death Tower can agree to," the Life and Death Tower Master said. "With your attitude, I can save a lot of time on this trip." Jian Wushuang smiled and said, "Listen, 3 conditions. First, hand over 50,000 sacred elixirs." The first condition Jian Wushuang mentioned made the experts from the Tower of Life and Death gasp. 50,000 sacred elixirs? The average first-grade divine master on the Danyang continent was only worth about 1,000 to 2,000 sacred elixirs. 50,000 sacred elixirs were too much. The Tower of Life and Death has such a deep foundation and has been recuperating for a long time. Unlike Crimson Rock Castle, which is constantly fighting among itself, it should have plenty of resources. "You should be able to afford 50,000 sacred elixirs," Jian Wushuang said. The Tower of Life and Death has agreed to provide 50,000 sacred elixirs, but they are too difficult to obtain. The Tower of Life and Death cannot provide 50,000 ready-made sacred elixirs. At most, we can only provide 30,000 sacred elixirs. The rest can only be replaced with treasures or resources of equal value," the Tower Master said directly. However, as he spoke, the corners of his mouth obviously twitched. The Tower of Life and Death could indeed provide 50,000 sacred elixirs, but that was about 80% of the resources of the Tower of Life and Death. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.